Clubhouse.
You'd be a lot more comfortable inside.
Can't stand that house when my husband isn't in it. It's just a big log prison for my worries.
Understood. Okay. I'd feel more comfortable if you sat inside.
Don't fret, Zane. I'm still spry enough to run inside if the bullets start flying. He'll arrive today, I reckon. I've done the math. Sioux Falls to Rapid City to Deadwood, Sheridan and Billings, and then home.
Then the fight.
Well, anything worth having is worth fighting for, Zane.
They don't make women like you anymore, man.
Yes, they do. The men they make different.
Welcome to Pod Clubhouse's coverage of 1923, a prequel series to the Yellowstone. This is Caroline.
And this is Mike. Tonight we're discussing the 1923 finale, A Dream and a Memory. Tonight's episode was written by Taylor Sheridan and directed by Ben Richardson.
Just a community note, please join us on Facebook in the Yellowstone 1923, 1883, and 4/6's discussion and news group to discuss 1923 and the whole universe of Yellowstone shows. Please remember, you guys, we are going to be spoiling this episode, so if you have not watched, please go watch. We assume you have. We are not going to go step-by-step recap through this episode, but we are going to talk about most everything. So if you haven't seen it, please go watch. And then come on back.
And Lord knows we have given you plenty of time to watch this episode. It's finale time. I realize that we're actually going to have to change the name of the Facebook group, Caroline, to the Yellowstone 1923, 1883, 4/6's, and 1944 discussion and news group. It's getting a little unwieldy with all the numbers and years.
It's getting to be quite a few. But, you know, this is Taylor, man. He's a big dreamer.
He loves his years.
He does.
Was this a satisfying finale? We got to start there. We got to start at the end. Was this a great series, season, chapter finale in the Yellowstone universe?
I think it is a reasonable stopping point for the story currently. So I think that it was like, if you look at this as a gigantic novel of these people's lives, then we just opened the book where we did, and this happened to be a time when we were having a battle for the Yellowstone, and Spencer was coming home and all this, and so we learned that story, and we did learn that full story from beginning to end of everything about what Spencer, we know about when he was born, we know when we know everything about him, really, all the way to his death. So to that end, I would say it was a very satisfying finale. I think that can only say that with complete calmness in my heart because I know much more's coming. So it's like not scary, right? Like there's no reason to be like, oh, I don't know. Cause they could always go back and add in some, lots of flashbacks or whatever to even fill in stuff that was now that like they could have missed and they're going to go back. Cause there's some stuff in here that was introduced that I felt like we were both like, oh, that better come back up again.
Oh, and I think they definitely left placeholders for us, like the mention of the widow at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to come in right in the smack dab. Probably my guess is that becomes a 1944 plotline. We'll get into that at the end when we talk about things we think may come up in 1944. But let's say it does. That's going to be right smack dab in the middle of the remaining 45 years of Spencer's life. So, and we're going to have to backfill, like, what happened in the aftermath? How long did Kara and Jacob live? Kara is basically the primary caregiver of little baby John at this point. She's not going to live forever. I mean, if Jacob is 80, she's got to be around probably 80 somewhere. How many more years does she live after the end of this episode? And then Spencer really has to become a dad and begin raising. Maybe that's the impetus for getting together with the widow or whatever, but that's storyline. There is plenty of still to fill in, but I agree with you. I think this told a story. I think at the end of the day, people were worried about it feeling rushed and the Battle of the Yellowstone that we basically spent 2 seasons building towards, and Spencer, the great hope, the prodigal son. the other question I think people are going to have is, was this rushed? Should this have been 2 episodes? The runtime on this without commercials was 112 minutes, just shy of 2 hours without commercials. Did it feel rushed? Did you think this should have been 2 episodes? The normal episode break would have been basically Alex being rescued in like the snow. I think that came around about the 50-minute mark or so in the episode. Could you have stopped there, with him jumping off the train or whatever? Or did this work as a super mega-sized episode?
Because to what end, though? To what end? Why split it, right? I mean, if there was something else, if we felt like they were missing something and we said, we feel like they edited out too much in order to make it only 1 episode and they should have kept something else in or made it longer, spent more time on something.
Right.
I would have gone with the 2 episode, but I don't feel that way. I don't feel like it was rushed. I do feel like we, like you said, got the placeholders that we need for 1944. And I think that, we're going to get into, obviously, the Battle of the Yellowstone. But, for me, I was satisfied.
I don't know that I have an answer for this question, but it's the name of the episode. So I figure, even if we don't have a great answer for it, I think it's something interesting for the listeners to think about. All of these episode titles seem to be on point with what's going on, either in the show as a whole or the episode specifically. This one is called A Dream and a Memory. So the question is, what is the dream? What is the memory?
I'll tackle the dream part. I'm willing to talk to that part. I feel like the dream is not meaning a dream like a sleeping dream, but I think it means a dream like, like your big goal, your big hope, the big American dream, if you will. And so I think that, to me, that's what the dream is. It's this, we're just continuously coming back to the story of this much larger dream. And it's not just the Duttons' dream. I mean, we spent a lot of time with Tiona, a lot of time with some of the other characters that some of their dreams came true and some of them didn't, but they all had dreams, right? And that was a constant theme always, and has been throughout all of the Yellowstone shows. Are you a dreamer? Are you not a dreamer? Which category do you fit in? So that's how I'm going to tackle the dream part. That is it's just the big overall arching adventure, excitement goal of having whatever it is you want for yourself. So it maybe it's the ranch for the Duttons, but for Tiona, it's obviously just leave me alone. That's her dream.
Right. I've lost everything. So
right.
For the love of God,
just leave me be.
I think the idea of the dream, I agree with you. I think it's the overarching. I think it is the dream of the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch is the dream. I think that idea actually goes all the way back to 1883, right? Remember, James's sister? It's never actually clear if it was James or Margaret's sister, but I think James's sister was the naysayer. And, like Margaret, he's a dreamer. And, their whole journey from Tennessee down to Texas up to Montana, landing in Paradise Valley because that's where Elsa dies and that's where he's going to make the ranch. That was all James's dream. And I think based on the conversations held that we've heard over the years in mainline Yellowstone and the conversations we heard in 1883 and the conversations we've heard for 2 seasons in 1923, everyone connected to the ranch shares the dream of the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch, shares a dream of Montana, shares a dream of what this idyllic ranching life is, can be, should be, and worth fighting and dying for to be. I think that is the dream. So then if that's the dream, then the memory is what? The thing I was thinking was, the memory is this chapter of the story as it comes to a close. Now this becomes the memory. This becomes the memory for mainline Yellowstone. This is the memory when Kevin Costner, John Dutton, talks about his memories with his grandfather. Now we think that would be Spencer, right? Because storyline, it would be Baby John should be Dabney Coleman, John Dutton, who we see later in his life, Kevin Costner's father. Kevin Costner talks about his grandfather. He talks about his great-grandfather, which I guess would have actually been a reference to Jacob. But, so, we're filling in the memories we've heard for years on these shows. And as we roll forward 2 decades to 1944, whenever that comes out, it is the memory of what happened here at 1923. It also ties into the end of the story where the final conversation with Alex that she has with Spencer when she's trying to explain why she chose and made the decision she did. She says she's not a dreamer. She understands the reality of the situation. But then in Elsa's voiceover, she says the memory of Alex never dulled. Never frayed, which is in direct contrast to what Kara says Elizabeth will experience with Jack, where the dull memories will dull, they will fade, they will disappear. So there's a lot of memory even being talked about, especially later in this episode. But I think this installment, this 2 season, this 16 hours of story is a memory in the chapter of the Yellowstone Ranch.
The easiest way to think about these shows is really to think about it like in this tangible, gigantic book kind of way, where we literally are like flipping to the next like chapter of the big giant binder of the Duttons here.
Let's talk a little bit about episode themes, and maybe this also bleed into series themes or even Yellowstone universe themes. The opening clip we played before we hit the theme music was that men are different, right? And Zane says, they don't make women like you anymore, he says to Kara. And she says, women are the same. It's men that are different. What do we think by that? I have my own thoughts, and I'm going to share them, but I want to give you the floor first. Women are the same. It's the men that are different. What does that mean? What is the metaphor? What is the significance of that at the beginning of this episode? And then as we look back at 1923, now that it's concluded.
I think that when I look at it, I identify with all of these females. All of them. I look at everything that Kara's doing, everything that Elizabeth's trying to do, everything Alex is trying to do. Alice, I think about her struggling with her kids and her predicament that she's in. And a lot of it doesn't seem that different as to what is going on now. I feel like they're all fighting for their marriages. They're all fighting for their families. They're all fighting for their place in the world, I guess. Men, it's funny because I think on one hand, you can find men that are similar, but the reality is like, if you looked at women now, I think you would say, well, look, you could pick out people pretty similar to Kara or pretty similar to Alice, right? Where you say like, here's a mom raising some kids and this is what it looks like. And this is what a mealtime looks like. And this is what a day in their life looks like. It probably doesn't look radically different than what they were doing. Whereas if you think about the men and you think about your own lives, listeners, like, did you play video games today? Is that how you shot things around the range, or, were you doing some VR thing or whatever? Like, I feel like there's a lot of differences with men that are like not as, I guess I want to say like, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say rugged. I don't feel like men are very rugged these days.
Oh, I think Yellowstone talks about that a lot. I think if you go fast forward to the mainline Yellowstone show, I think John Dutton and Casey and Rip spend a lot of time looking at the city slickers, the elite people who are moving into Bozeman, the Dan Jenkins as pretenders, as people coming to play cowboy, people coming to play rancher. But they're just dilettantes at play. They're not these men. They're not James. They're not Jacob. They're not Spencer. They're not John Dutton.
I think, you're talking about some of the older men kind of feel, and I'm looking at some of the younger men too, like the Jimmies, who was like, what's all this? Like, he really had only like played video games and stuff, and he didn't know anything about the rodeo, didn't know anything about riding, didn't know anything about this life. Like,
but he learned. He
did learn given the opportunity. It seems like given the chance, these men could be the same, if we even want them to be the same. So that's the other thing. Let's think about this. A lot of people kind of lament the past, okay? There's a lot of holding on. Let's not make any progress. The past is somehow the best. Somehow. Which we all know it happens, like how when someone passes away, even if that person was a jackass, all of a sudden everyone's like, weren't they so great? Yeah. We always say it like
it's the curse of nostalgia.
They turn in, they get their sainthood, is what we joke in our family. Is that all of a sudden this person who has annoyed you your entire life is suddenly this awesome, wonderful person after they pass. I think it's like that about the past in general. Once it's gone, we only remember the good stuff. We don't remember the bad. So I can say stuff like a rugged man, and we can say, ooh, that sounds good. Then we can also say, hey, remember there was also no rules about how that rugged man can treat his wife or his children or, anything else. Like, do we want that back? Do we want men to be different? you know?
Right.
So it's like,
yeah.
On one hand, it's like women are the same, men are different. And it's like, okay, is that good or bad?
Look at Kevin Costner, John Dutton's children, and him as a father to them. Look at even Spencer, who I think is a fan favorite.
I'm confused about fatherhood for him.
In the few scenes that we got to see with him and the baby sharing screen time, he was not holding the baby, which maybe in 1923 you didn't. But Jacob was in the birthing room. Jacob watched this woman he just met 10 minutes ago give birth, and he stood up to the doctor. He says, "Give her the goddamn baby," you know, and stroking her hair and telling her that you tell Spencer, this is a story you need to share with your husband, and promising that if she can't, he will, you know. But Spencer, I'm going ranching, I'm going wrangling, you know, cattle up in the crazies for a week. Hopefully Aunt Kara's good with the baby and the goats and milking goats, you know?
Right. So to that end, I would say, aren't we glad that men are different? And let's hope you stay home and help with your baby and change a diaper and, you know, help out all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, but it's a weird thing, right?
Right.
Because I think it's meant to be like a ha ha ha.
But women are changing though in so many ways, though, in their roles in society and the way many women end up living their roles. I think in 1923, I think in 1883, there's a strong female line going from Margaret Dutton, Elsa Dutton, Cara Dutton, Alex Dutton, Beth Dutton. These are strong women who were not just important in their families, they were backbones. They were steel spinal columns of their families, keeping them together, keeping the men in check, keeping the dreamers in check, keeping the men from getting shot, right? Cara making Jacob promise to come home is probably as responsible for Jacob making it back home alive, even though he does get shot, than anything else, because they are the glue. And I think in modern day life, that is still often true. Taylor, for all of his flaws, and he has plenty of them, I think has always gone out of his way to make the female leads in the Yellowstone universe strong women that you would hope you were your mother or your sister, or at least be aspirational to that person in your life, or maybe even turn and be like, man, I never really thought about how important my grandmother was or my mother was in this. If you were lucky enough to grow up with that kind of family unit. Yeah. And listen, not everyone got to grow up or gets to grow up with that family unit. But in this universe, you cannot deny the importance of the female role, the motherly role, the strong presence that they have in this world. Dr. Andrew on the train kind of takes it even one step further, because there's a lot of conversation going on in the wake of this episode of how does a baby in 1923 at 6 months, not fully developed lungs, survive the hour, which they say will not survive the hour. And then it lets out the most mighty yell, first baby cry, real Dutton badassery, of what did you say? Now I will scream loudly. Listen to this clip of Dr. Andrew.
How many months?
6. Will he survive?
We'll see. The female form is a miracle that can withstand physical hardships well beyond that of men, especially when with child. If there's a way to protect the child, your body will find it.
That's supernatural superhero stuff that he's talking about. He's literally saying your body will figure out a way to keep this child alive as long as there is even an infinitesimal % chance that it can. And it does. And that's pretty remarkable. Is it realistic? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sitting next to you and I have 23 weekers, preemies, and I don't know. Twins, and they both made it. They're both 22 years old, and they were 1 pound and 1 pound 2, and I don't know what to say about women's bodies are miracles. I mean, because that would imply that I was the miracle in that situation. And I usually give the credit to the girls. I usually give the credit to my babies and say, they did it. They were tough fighters. I never put myself in that scenario, really. But I appreciated that, the baby did get to breastfeed some, and that seemed to, everybody basically understands that those first breastfeeding moments does give a boost to the baby's immune system, and a bunch of vitamins, a bunch of just disease fighting stuff is happening there. So I thought everything they were saying about this men-woman concept, the only thing I guess I want to pause and just say, I think they did a beautiful job with like Jacob and Kara of showing like a strong partnership, a very equal partnership.
Short supply in the Yellowstone universe.
Short supply, period. Right? And so that's the one thing I want to say. Like in one hand, we're looking at this like, oh man, it's the past. And look at this amazing relationship between Jacob and Kara. I wish things were like the past. And it's like, no, what we really mean to say is, I wish relationships were communicative partnerships where both people were respected and loved. And that part, I think, is what has changed, I guess, I want to say, but also is probably exactly the same. You know, I wonder what the percentages are. I wonder if we there's any way to figure out. I know divorce is not the right stat to look at because who knows why people stay together or they don't. But it's like there's something there about like, you can't show us these relationships where partnerships are loved and respected and everything's going really well and then be like, don't you want that from the past? And it's like, yeah, but it wasn't. I don't want that from the past. I just want a fair and equal and loving relationship now. You know, I will say this though, for anyone who's been watching White Lotus and have had a lovely experience with old Parker Posey, if you looked at Parker Posey's character compared to Cara Dutton, and you said, women are the same. It's men that are different. I don't know. I mean, when we have the scene where, you know, Parker's like, I can't live without all of the comforts and all the everything. And it's like, wow, I don't know. There is a difference in certain people, right? I'm not even going to say that gender wise because that wasn't even it. But that person can still exist too.
I agree. But also she acknowledges in that statement that I have lived too long, too wealthy to now do something differently. So she's acknowledging that she is a creature of the situation in which she found herself. I think Kara was a frontierswoman wife and acquitted herself extremely well in that role. It's an interesting conversation because you look at Kara and how she dealt with all of this adversity, and then you naturally have to think about Elizabeth and Alex and how they dealt with the adversity that they were given in similar situations or similar adverse conditions. And Elizabeth sharing the house with Kara and how they were dealing with their things. I think Elizabeth doesn't come off great for this lifestyle. Really, she has one great moment.
She's also a creature of habit, right?
But also a creature of habit.
This is not her.
This was not her life, right? And she even earlier in the season talking to Jack said, Kara told me I have to love this life. Not loving you is not enough to make it, which by inference means Kara was in love with the life as much as she was in love with Jacob. And so she was willing to do all of the work. I think Alex showed this is a question of grit. This is all kind of tying back to things we talked about all season. Alex in this episode alone, to say nothing of, Alex only lives 5 days between Ellis Island and this episode. 5 days.
Wild.
Think about what she went through in those 5 days.
It's crazy.
I don't even want to recount them because they were all just horrors. But in 5 days, think about what she did. And then today, still in this episode, still has the wherewithal to light the fire in the car, to roll down the window for the ventilation, to give herself a chance. I'm not saying like it was very cold in that car. It would be very easy just to close your eyes and go.
I just had the worst thought because of it only being 5 days.
Right? She gets to Ellis Island on March 24th and she...
Listen. Okay. All right, listeners, this is going to be for only like a slice of the pie. But if you want to start labor, there are certain things that you can do to start labor. And if everyone remembers what happens on the train with the man, the coffee man, now I am starting to get a horrible feeling inside that all that, you know, I mean, she says words like puts fingers inside you and stuff. I mean, he may have like started labor.
I mean,
I know that's like kind of, it's a little weird and far-fetched, but just when you were saying it's only been 5 days, I was thinking she had been in labor like that whole time. Like, because when you're so far, why I say that is because obviously, again, like I gave birth at 23 weeks. So like, you don't know these contractions the same way as like full 40-week contractions, which I had with my last child. So that incident could have actually thrown her into preterm labor.
Yeah.
That's a whole other.
And then you add the trauma of the.
But just the physicality of what happened.
That's true.
Oh, I never like put that together at all. Because it was only 5 days.
It was only 5 days.
And it was only a couple days after that. You could count by hours.
I mean, let's see. So she's at Ellis Island on the 24th. What probably happens on the train, and we can count it, is probably the 26th.
Oh, you guys, I never thought of that incident.
And she's laid to rest on the 29th. So she actually probably passes away on the 28th. And it's a 2-day, they're in the car like basically 2 days, right? Driving their 1,500 miles. Yeah. So the incident on the train's probably 2 days from when she goes into labor.
Or when she has him.
Or she has the baby. Which I give kudos to the show, the realism, which we absolutely did not need to see at all. I mean, I thought we were watching The Pit there for a second. Like full umbilical cord and all the goo. And,
there was goo. There was definitely goo. All right. Well, so getting back to our women are the same, men that are different. I don't know. I mean,
this is just an ode to Yellowstone women are built for tough. And just recognize Taylor has one more bite at this apple and being like, see the line. There's conversations in here about she was Mustang Wild. She's a shooting star. There's who would have thought there's two. Jacobs is saying that to Cara. But if you had asked James Dutton about his wife or his daughter, Mustang Wild absolutely would have described them. Beth Dutton is all of those things.
Oh, and Elsa is a shooting star for sure.
Right.
Short-lived, bright.
Burn fast.
Yellow. Yellow hair.
Man, the Dutton men do like their blondes, huh?
They like their yellow wigs.
So I think at the end of the day, it was really just more of a Taylor telling you, pay attention to this. This is the secret sauce of these shows. It's not the rugged men.
It's not. It's the
not,
actual, the
they're the eye
love
candy.
between the relationship.
It's the relationships, but it's the resiliency of the women. Recognize. Even Alice, we didn't get to see in this episode, but she's somewhere in the basement, which I can't believe they even have a basement in the Yellowstone ranch house, but she's in the basement with the two kids keeping them alive while Zane is, whooping ass all over the ranch. Like, everyone's doing their part. Even Elizabeth, with a shotgun, she blows that motherfucker, like, across the room with the shotgun,
She did.
So, give your flowers to the women. Let's stay with a couple more episode themes. This is actually a you question, Caroline, because Whitfield says in this episode, when he's talking to Mabel, the pain is just for reference. The parts you wish would end magnify the pleasure. So you actually had a great question about this. Is that what the point of the show is? You could say it better because I don't think I'm not getting the wording right, but there's something about the metaphor of that for the show.
Well, okay. So everyone who's listened to this podcast knows that I have been railing against the Whitfield prostitution storyline and just feeling like it's awful and I hate it and I really need it to mean something. So at the end of the day, here's what I'm going to say about it. Because every time we spent time with Whitfield and this prostitute storyline, inevitably I would find myself saying, I want to spend more time with Kara. I want to spend more time with Jacob. I want to go back over with Alex and Spencer. I want to be somewhere else. To his point of old Donald Whitfield, the showing me these horrible scenes actually very much did make me crave the good scenes and the scenes with the actors and the dialogue and the storylines that I wanted to see. So in a messy way, I feel like they had these really gross storylines to kind of, I don't want to say I felt manipulated because that's like too strong, but like if you show these really gory, awful stuff and then you show me this like really wonderful, beautiful thing, I can't help but keep wanting to run for the beautiful thing, right? So yeah, in a weird way, maybe like psychologically trained us into craving the Dutton storylines.
Or at least this is a trap that so many of us that watch all the Yellowstone shows fall into, that the Duttons are the heroes. They're not the focus of the story. They're more than that they're the heroes of the story. And maybe you can certainly make that argument in 1883 and 1923. They are justified heroes defending, not attacking. But it's hard to watch mainline Yellowstone and say that all of the Duttons act in a heroic way. They do plenty of bad things.
They say it though, that it's like, it's all very relative, right? Like there's a lot of like,
But the trap that we get laid is that we get the Whitfields of the world. We get the scalding the back with the water,
talk about it.
Scene. And then how do you not look at Kara and Jacob and Spencer and Alex and Jack and Elizabeth and Zane and Alice and the kids? How do you not look at them and say, well, run to them. You are the good people. I mean, Lord, in the relativity of the world, how do you not look at them and say, well, these are my obvious heroes of the story?
So Taylor, if that was the point of this, if the point was to show us these scenes that were very difficult to watch and characters who were unlikable and really said things, did things that we wanted to, I literally closed my eyes, or I would have to have someone else tell me about the scene or whatever, because I cannot watch this stuff. It's not entertaining for me. If the point of all that was truly your pain is just for the reference for you to enjoy the other parts, then I would say you succeeded.
I've seen some cowardly camouflage in my life, but I don't think I've seen this.
I'm taking my family, and I'm leaving. Had enough of this place.
So I suppose it's a coincidence that you picked this particular day to leave.
You mean the same day as your nephew arrives? The Great Hope? Maybe he is. Good for you. You get to keep your land for a generation or two. Whitfield's just the first, you know. There's more where he came from, more of them than me, and way more than you. They'll never let him leave the station, Jacob. You can take my word for it, or you can learn it.
Let him try. And you can try and get on that train, but that ain't gonna happen either. You started this thing, Banner. You don't get to leave it.
I love that line, that last part. You started this, you don't get to leave it. I think I literally went like this. Because that was a hot line, man. And it's so true. Here's the thing about the Whitfield whole concept, right? They showed us that conference table. Had they never shown us that conference table, I would feel differently about Whitfield. But if you show me a conference table of men all dressed the same, all with a big purse, hungry to ready to do this, then you've already shown me that Whitfield is most certainly just the latest iteration
Tip of the iceberg.
Who's going to be there. But like, in all reality, I think that a week after Whitfield's dead, everyone just moves a seat at the conference table. I don't think those men just dissipate out into the wind thinking like, oh, well, the guy died who had this gigantic, amazing investment opportunity. I guess we all just wander away. I feel strongly that someone will come popping right back up into that spot.
I agree with you, and we're going to pivot now because you made that great point, and we can talk about it, what I'm calling the finally clip. But I played that there because for me, the final episode theme, and I think a series theme, and I think a Yellowstone universe theme is, this is the Dutton experience. There are always more Whitfields. There are always more men in their tuxedos at the table looking to come. Whitfield is just the first. He will certainly not be the last. We don't know that there weren't, I mean, James Dutton dies ultimately because of people trying to steal horses off of their nascent ranch 30 years before this. Like, he's not the first. And we know, because we've watched the mainline show, they will not be the last. And I'm sure 1944 and whatever comes after that will show Whitfield was just the first. There are always more than you, Jacob, more than me, Banner says. So that's the Dutton's existence. And I think that actually ties nicely into Tiona's story. But because you said that, I want to talk about this clip. This is the final confrontation between Jacob and Spencer and Whitfield, because Jacob addresses what you're talking about right away.
What did I tell you?
Now I understand. The prodigal son has returned.
Mm-hmm. And it will be the last thing you ever see.
I suppose you've
A plan for explaining the murder of a man in his dining room.
I think we about killed everybody we'd have to explain it to.
You took an oath. That badge came with an oath. To uphold the law. The law. So be it. To jail we go. You can't get away with this.
I don't plan to. I plan on making such an example of you that it'll be 50 years before one of your kind dares enter this valley again. I want them teaching about how you died in school books. Look at me. You killed my wife.
I don't know you.
Her name was Alex. And I would really like to hear you say it.
Alex?
Finally, that last gunshot. If you're not jumping out of your couch, fist pumping the air, then you have not been paying attention to this show, I don't think. Or you're someone I probably don't want to know if you're mourning the death of this, of Whitfield and Lindy, who grabs the knife and like war whoops, like she's going to take on Spencer before he puts her down with one shot. At least Mabel gets away. Like
Lindy had lost it, man. She
fully bought in.
God.
She bought in at the timeshare presentation.
She did. Yipes. Well, so you're right. I mean, I appreciate that he did address, Jacob did exactly what I just said about like, why would the next guy just not move to the next chair? Like everybody moves one step forward.
To teach it in school.
I appreciated all of that. And guess what? Coming into your home and shooting you at your breakfast table is certainly a good way to be remembered. And that mansion, we have to mention, we do believe is the governor's mansion from mainline Yellowstone, for those of you guys who are watching. Which
would have been located in quote unquote Helena, Montana, not Bozeman, but location wise, I believe that is the same building.
It looks awfully similar, if not. So, wow, huh?
Yeah, really satisfying.
What if Whitfield did live in what ultimately became the governor's mansion? Like it's a historical building and it truly was. They rebuilt it where it got burned or whatever.
Maybe.
It becomes the governor's. So how crazy would a future Dutton be to live there?
That would be crazy.
Wow. We can't spoil too much for any of you guys who are just watching in line from 1883 who may not have touched the Yellowstone, anything. We won't tell you who, but we will just say that would be crazy if that really was the same building.
There's a couple things about Whitfield here. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time with him because really he's dead now.
He's over.
and he lost and justice as we see it, as the Duttons see it, was done in the end. He makes a really good point though during that tuxedo party. And
tuxedo party is what we're calling it. We are such rubes.
They're wearing their fancy clothes.
They're having some sort of a cocktail dinner.
They got them white tails out. He basically says, this is a paraphrase, because I refuse to pull audio of Whitfield saying anything.
Whoa, did y'all know that Mike had a line? That's the line.
Yeah, if you go through, I think the only clips I ever pulled of Whitfield was when he was talking to someone else, and I had to. But him just
monologuing? No.
Nothing. Evil villain monologuing. He says, though, men have an insatiable, inexplicable need to traverse the untamed land. He goes on to say more. He gets to, when you bed a woman, it is the animal in you doing it. And that animal needs to wander. And we, through the ski resort that he's promising here, will give that animal the chance. He's not wrong. He's not wrong about the pull of man. This is why Whitfield is such a good villain. All of the sex worker, torture storylines aside. Because Banner was 1,000% right. When he comes upon the ski idea, go back several episodes at the beginning of the season, and he tells Banner doesn't see what he sees. And he's like, it's because you lack vision. And then in the speakeasy that night, he's talking to Clyde, I believe it is, about it. And Clyde says the man has vision when he's telling him about the ski resort. And Banner says, it's not vision. The man is like the devil. He sees inside your heart. He sees your greed. And he's right. In the end, Whitfield does understand the dark, animalistic, and greedy impulses of man. That's what makes Whitfield such a good villain. That's what makes Whitfield so dangerous. Because he knows the strings to pull for most men, or at least parts of every man. They're there. those animalistic, back of the brain, the coveting, right? Think about Kara.
Well, Lindy. Look at Lindy. Look what he did to her.
Look what Lindy and did to her for the express purpose of unleashing her on congressmen, on politicians, to corrupt them so that he could control them, manipulate them, to appeal to those dark impulses. But think about Kara talking to Elizabeth a couple episodes ago. Man will covet himself out of existence. Whitfield is the instrument of that. He understands it. It really is a genius character. And at the end of the day, Timothy Dalton actually is a great choice to play this role. He does have that Bondian thing about him, James Bondian thing about him, but from the villain side, right? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. Whitfield understands what makes men tick, and he's this close. I don't think we really appreciate how close, if not for a little bit of hubris and probably a little bit of too much faith in Banner being fully bought into the program, Whitfield could easily succeed with this plan. The Duttons, your take on the Battle of Yellowstone was dead on. There are 6 people defending the ranch, and that includes Kara and Elizabeth.
Yes, it does.
That 6 people, including Kara and Elizabeth, defending wave after wave of enemy.
And here's the thing, like, let's point out for a second, we're going to go over to the Battle of Yellowstone, but there were other buildings out there that were not just the house.
Right.
They were only protecting the house.
Right.
So, I mean, hello, you could have easily gone and torched the barn and torched torched where the feed barns were and all that stuff.
Whatever herd they had left, which was very little.
I mean, it could have gotten way worse. And of course, we're going to go into it. But to your point about Whitfield, I think you're right. And again, going back to like what my actual grief was with it, I don't think they had to show things so explicitly.
Right.
Okay. That's where I think it is at the end of the day. I appreciate the fact that the storyline at the end, it did have a purpose. It did show you how he could break down one individual person, Lindy. And you're right, what you said, and I don't know if you like hit it hard enough, really. The whole thing about using Lindy to go for politicians and stuff, like, okay, so there was a point, you guys. There was a point that they never really put a headline over and said, like, this is it, right? Like, I am creating actually this army of women. In my mind, at least, because really it's just Lindy. Right. But in my mind, I'm creating this person. Now, the one thing that I think that Whitfield doesn't make sense in this storyline is where everyone like Whitfield would have bodyguards galore.
There's one.
Bodyguards galore.
Right, there's one, and he's stationed outside the house.
For the battle.
They're all gone for the battle, right? Because you got to get all the sheepers and the miners. They've all gone to battle.
But because there's a professional bodyguard.
He does have a bodyguard standing outside because Spencer and Jacob walk up outside and he's like, "What's your business here?" He's got a gun strapped across his head. And Spencer dispatches him with his Spencer-like technique, one punch to the head, and puts him on the ground. And he specifically, I have in my notes here because I was really taken by in this episode, for whatever reason, Taylor chose to really focus on the staff reactions to what's happening in this fully laid out breakfast. Why are you even going to go through the trouble of laying out this lavish breakfast for just 3 people? And also because you're going to end up putting all this shit on the floor anyway. But there's so much focus on the staff intentionally being dismissed, right? A head nod to the head butler. The butler knows I'm to leave and close the doors behind me. He doesn't have to say it. He just knows because he's been through this circus before. And then the staff is all gathered in their kitchen. There's a maid, there's a female cook, there's the butler, and they're all just staring at each other with varying degrees of disgust or indifference or just resolution. Like, this is the boss and this is the job and it pays better than other things I could be doing. But I'm curious why we are all of a sudden now, we've been watching this for 2 seasons. Like, why are we getting the staff reactions here? But I think to your point, they weren't in the room though.
They weren't in the room. So it allowed us to, but it allowed us to listen to a scene or know something bad was happening in the dining room and gave you some breathing space to break away from those scenes. But I'm with you. It had a real Downton Abbey kind of feel of that.
Yeah,
if
Lord Tully really went apeshit on like Cora and like the, in the breakfast mansion.
I just mean like the fact that we even touched base with how they're feeling or showing them.
Kind of reaction. They've been so invisible so much of the series. Yeah. And just these instruments, just like the teapot or just like the restraints or the gallows or the stockade in the bed.
So insane.
The staff was really just this weird silent instrument. So it was weird that we were getting the reaction shots. I don't think this should require a discussion. I think it's pretty obvious, but only because I have seen in the aftermath of this episode people asking the question of, how does Spencer get to blaming Whitfield for Alex's death? I have seen it enough times asked on the internet between Reddit and X, formerly known as Twitter, and Facebook groups. So I guess we should discuss it. I think
just for like a second, but I mean, my whole thing is just that obviously Spencer would not have been doing this whole rush to come back to the place had it not been for Whitfield. And so, I mean, just that impetus alone, that the entire point of Spencer having to rush here and be separated from his wife, which that wouldn't have happened had Whitfield not been applying the pressure. I mean, he's the pressure being applied to the situation. So many things may have happened anyway had they just made the decision to go home. Like, they still may have been separated, things still may have gone wrong. But the way that Spencer had to say, like, I've got to leave you, like, and you go on the train with Jacob and blah, 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 like all the different parts.
They could have stopped in England. They could have properly met parents, right? Yes. Everything would have been different, the trajectory, because he wasn't in a hurry to get home. He didn't even know. And remember, until Alex reads the letters overnight in Zanzibar, he doesn't even know he's supposed to be going home.
Right.
That sets this all, it's literally Alex reading the letters, which again come back into play in this episode in their full circle moment. It's Whitfield's actions that set it in motion.
Yeah, it pushes the first
domino. Banner pressed his luck, almost got hung for, did get hung for it, but almost died for it. And he was pretty defeated. He was ready just to kick rocks and go home. He wasn't going to continue to fight because literally would have cost him his life, because it almost did. And the sheriff wasn't going to do anything about it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until Whitfield gave him the resources and the backing up that he needed in order to then, press the fight. So did he siphon the gas out of Paul's gas tank? No. But he put in motion everything that led to this happening.
You have to look bigger. That's all. Right. I mean, if people are looking for a direct thing like Whitfield pushed Alex, like, no, it wasn't like that. It's bigger picture.
At the end of the Battlestone, when Kara and Spencer...
Battlestone? Are we calling it the Battlestone? Let's call it the Battlestone.
At the end of the Battle of Yellowstone, when Kara and Spencer finally hugged, finally reunited after so many years apart from each other in the show's timeline, the thing Spencer wants to know after he describes Alex and Jacob and at the hospital is, who did this? There's a man in a mansion in town throwing lavish parties who set this all in motion. His name is Whitfield.
What did you call it? A tuxedo party?
They're having his tuxedo parties.
They're having tuxedo parties.
Right. Planning tourism boons. So yeah, it's not a direct line correlation, but he is the man who puts this all in motion.
Yeah, so it's all Whitfield. Whitfield was the bad baddie of the whole 1923-24 whole part of this. I don't know what to call it. It's weird to call it season. I don't know, because we're a larger, a big tale.
This installment.
So I feel like, we almost need new verbiage like that, like an installment, because it's not, because it is a specific named titled section, but it feels...
It's a prequel story.
It's a prequel, as it turns out, as we say every week.
It's a prequel story.
To Yellowstone.
It's a prequel origin story to the Yellowstone. There's one more thing that comes out of this question, because we framed it so often this season of, why are we still doing this with Banner and Lindy and Christy and now Mabel? What is the point of it? The most direct point of it, as it plays out, the most concrete point of it, finally pays off in the form of Banner's, whether reluctant or not, redemption arc. And it starts in this, it's very crystal clear where he is now fully turned against Whitfield at the beginning of this episode. Let's take a listen to this clip.
I'm not a good man, Ellie.
Banner, you've been as good as one can be with the options you've had.
I don't think I'm a bad man either. There are takers in this world and those who get took. I just got fed up with being took. I'm not evil. I take no pleasure in another man's pain. Dutton has half this county, half the next one. There's no bigger taker in the state, but the man ain't evil. Whitfield's evil, Ellie. Heart black as coal. Dutton, he takes, he don't care if you suffer. I understand that. I respect it even. Whitfield takes to make you suffer. It ain't the taking he wants. It's the suffering. I don't beat no women. Use them up. Kill them. Throw them off a cliff and go find another.
Banner, what in the world are you talking about?
I'm a man. Man's got to look his son in the eye. Stand by what he did. I can't do that here.
Oh my gosh, Ellie's face when Banner starts getting into the, like, I don't beat any women. I don't
toss them down cliff sides.
Yeah. That's the part of the conversation where at the beginning you're like, I'm not trying to be a bad man. You're like, you're doing your best. You're doing everything you can. And then he's all, I don't beat women. What?
Right.
Oh my gosh. Hey, we saw this early on where maybe the sex worker storyline was going to disgust Banner enough, make him feel horrible enough that he actually, this is the moment where he decides he's got to change his ways, and he does. So to that end, again, the sex worker storyline does pay off.
You had utility for sure. And, we called the possible Banner redemption arc back in episode 1, not later than episode 2, because Whitfield was so boldly shaming Banner for what Banner is in Banner's heart, a sheeper, a man who works the land like Jacob Dutton, and the nobility, the way they see it, the way Taylor Sheridan, I think, certainly sees this lifestyle. And Whitfield was mocking it, openly mocking it to Banner's face. And the seeds of the redemption arc and the seeds of at least Banner turning against Whitfield, even if he didn't redeem himself as a quote unquote good man, were set there. But it really was, I think the turning point was the scene where he walks into the bedroom and at the end says, that could be, and you see him struggling while he's talking to Whitfield while the things are going on in the bed. And he says, that could be someone's daughter. And he's like, yeah. And if it was her mother was here, I'd do the same to her. And I said in that episode, Ellie is a mother. He has a child. He doesn't have a daughter. He has Henry. He has a son, but he is a father. He has a wife who can easily have been in this same situation if Whitfield had just demanded it, because this is why I like that clip so much. Dutton is a taker, no bigger taker in the state than him, but he's not evil. He kind of actually depicts him as amoral, the same way Banner likes to think of himself. I'm not a bad man. I'm not an evil man. I'm not a bad man, but I'm not a good man either. I just am. I am just a man. And I was tired of being took. Jacob Dutton, he doesn't care if you suffer. He doesn't care if you don't suffer. Jacob Dutton just cares for protecting what Jacob Dutton thinks is his. He's just a taker, but he's not evil. Whitfield is a taker, and Whitfield is evil. And it's not the taking he even cares about. It's the making you suffer part. He takes just to make you suffer. And therein is the dividing line. And I appreciate that. And I like that Banner even acknowledges Jacob is someone that he understands his motivations. He doesn't care if you suffer. He doesn't not care if you suffer. That's not his thing. His thing is, I'm protecting mine. I don't care about you at all. I don't think about you. He's Don Draper in the elevator. He's like, I think about you. I pity you all the time. I'm like, I don't think about you at all.
That's my favorite line.
and that's where Banner thinks he is. Banner wants to be that person, but now he's carrying naked girls downstairs and tossing them off of cliff sides. Much to Ellie's chagrin. And she's like, Banner, what are you talking about? Could
you guys imagine being Ellie in that scene? First of all, how dare Banner sit in a dark,
I know that. That was nightmare fuel for you. Yeah.
Oh my God. If I was Ellie, oh my God. I'm alone home with the kids.
He's distraught though. When she turns on the light and he's like, what are you doing? Why are you sitting here? He's like, I don't know. I got home late. He doesn't even know where he is. It's almost like he's in a fugue state. Yeah. And he's literally trying to process it in real time to his wife, who is so far out of the loop. All she knows is this is a bad man that Whitfield's gotten in bed with. And I know that because he hasn't introduced me, but we're still living here. And when he says we're going to go to Paramount, I had to cut it out because the clip would have been too long, but he says, I can make good money, doing fish in Portland. And she's like, you make more than that here. And he says, I don't earn it. I make it, but I don't earn it.
Yeah.
Which is also a pride thing too. And then the end, which becomes a very big flashpoint for him, is I can't look my son in the eye here doing what I'm doing, living as I'm living. At least in Portland, I will be living an honest life and I can look him in the eye. And that's important. And for a man, the quote unquote man that Taylor Sheridan is trying to depict here, that is an important quality. You can do whatever you have to do. You can justify whatever you have to justify to protect what's yours. But also, can you live with yourself? Can Jacob do what Jacob does and look at Kara in the eye? Can Spencer do what Spencer needs to do and look at Alex in the eye, or his son in the eye? These are important questions, at least for Taylor Sheridan in all of these shows. Where the line is less important than, can I justify it such that I can look my loved ones in the eye and be okay with that? Yeah.
I think that's like Whitfield by design has no wife, no kids, nobody that we know about that he has to look in the eye.
It's all disposable.
So everybody's either paid for or, no, I think that's it. Everyone's paid for. All the employees across the board. Everybody's paid for. So that's the thing. And maybe that's a really good lesson for Taylor to be sort of like looking at us like, you know, if you are sitting there trying to think about decisions you're making, can you look at your people in the eye at the same time?
That's a good litmus test. As good as any.
It is.
As good as any.
If you can look your people in the eye and feel good about it, then you probably aren't throwing bodies over a cliff. So that's good.
Right. Or at least not innocent bodies. Right?
Okay.
Because Rip and
Really
Lloyd throw plenty of people over the side at the train station. And are they good men? I don't know. Are they bad men? I don't know.
They're just men that were in the way.
They're just men who were in the way.
They were.
They're takers, and they were trying to be took, and that's what they dealt with.
Can I just tell you that I think the casting and or the accent that they chose for Banner, it was all sold in the took line. When he's like, took.
I was tired of being took.
Took. Again, I'm going to pretend to do it because it's terrible. But there's just something, every time he said it, I was like, oh, that's why they cast him. Because he says it so perfectly.
Let's, I guess we should finish Banner since we're already here. Yeah. We're already halfway through this. This is after the train station battle has come and gone, and Banner shoots Clyde, who is about to kill Jacob, and then Sheriff McDowell, who had already been shot, shoots and kills Banner. Mm-hmm. That's where we're at. Banner has also seen Spencer help Henry and Ellie get onto the train. Spencer, who he doesn't know it all, but has come to kill and has sent all these men to kill, sees with one of the last acts of his being alive, sees this enemy help his wife and son escape the carnage, because the gunfighting is still going on at that point. Mm-hmm. And without hesitation, Spencer lifts the boy up by one arm and pulls him on, and then pulls on Ellie. And Banner notably sees that and makes eye contact with Spencer, who is like, I don't know who you are, dude. Sorry you've been shot. But Banner very much knows who he is. Right. This is the conversation between Jacob and Banner.
So you're a man of your word after all.
I told you. Get my family to Portland. Where they're clean at this. Clean as me.
You have my word.
It's all I'm bound to go.
A man's word is all you've got at the end of the day. That's his literal final words. I have a practical question. Ellie and Henry are already on the train. Jacob promises to make sure they get to Portland and that they get a clean life away from Banner and clean life from everything that's gone on here. And Jacob promises and says, I give you my word. How can Jacob possibly keep that promise? Jacob is not a man who makes promises willy-nilly. So what's the plan here? They're on the train. It's not even like he has to, at that point, they're already on the train when he even says that. Is that promise fulfilled? I got them on the train. It's already done, so that's easy promise to make. Or is there something more there? And in the train station, Henry questions his father of, you're already rich. We could be rich here. And Banner tells him, no, you don't get rich in Montana. You get rich elsewhere, and then you move to Montana. That's the lesson he's taking away from Banner and all the tuxedo men at the tuxedo party. So is this a 1944 storyline where Henry now will be in his 30s, because he's a teenager here, where maybe he has become rich and now he returns to Montana the way his father gave him with one of his last words of wisdom, one of his last words at all? Or does he return in maybe some kind of revenge fantasy because Ellie's not fully brought up on the story, just knows Jacob and the Duttons were on the other side of your father. She wasn't really clued in on the change of heart there at the end.
And she certainly didn't know that it was Spencer that helped her on.
But she knows it was the sheriff in bed with the Duttons who shot him dead.
Right.
So is this some kind of weird revenge thing that comes back based out of a misunderstanding, which is one of the most classic storytelling tropes of all time, is the revenge from the past based on a complete misunderstanding that you're wrong about.
Right.
Like, does Henry come with a gun and a vengeance?
Avenge your father's death is certainly a big one.
Is there no better motivator?
I like it. I could see that for 1944. I'm okay with that being part of the storyline. I don't know if Banner's family gets to continue on, because as we know, for like 1883, we left characters behind that we didn't continue on with.
Oh, Joseph. Building the house with his one leg.
Oh. So yeah, there's plenty of I think it could, that's a good, interesting loose thread there.
Because maybe the whole point of it was you were a man of your word after all, and a man's word is all he got, so Jacob has to give him his word for something. But that seems like a lot to go through, and you have him making this promise, and you have these two people. There's a lot of people left.
I think
there's a lot of hanging threads left there that feel like maybe they're ripe, or at least to open the door. We'll leave the door open.
Yeah, I think it does leave the door open. But I like to say this. I think when he says, let my family get to Portland, I think all that really means, it doesn't mean like he's supposed to actually escort them or make sure they get there, but he doesn't put a hit out on them. He doesn't tell anyone their names. He doesn't send their pictures ahead.
I want him dead.
He doesn't.
I want his wife dead.
There's
his son dead.
There's no posters. There's no Tiona posters going up. There's no don't call ahead to the Portland police and have them taken off the train. Like I think that's all it means by let them get there means like don't get in the way of them getting there. That's what I'm going to go with. Don't call a hit for them.
So here's my last question for you. Now that
does that satisfy you though?
It does. And that makes sense because Banner's questioning him is help them not just get to Portland, but it's help them get a clean life from me. Help them get a clean life from all of this, which if you don't chase them, I guess.
Just stop chasing them.
Just stop chasing them. Yeah. It maybe allows them to do that. And it's up to Ellie whether or not she wants to continue associating with Banner
changing her name and everything
changing
else.
Everything and living in the light, right? Because he shifted a lot of the cash on him into her satchel, and he saw the writing on the wall. But after a conversation where you don't get to leave, you started this, and Jacob had agreed that the wife and the son could get on the train. That's
such a wildly, amazingly old-fashioned line. The whole "you don't get to leave." It's
a pretty badass line. It's a favorite. This episode had a lot of great lines in it, and that was one of them.
Because it's just so
you started this.
Yeah, because it's so goes back to this much different almost just fist fighting in the street kind of thing.
Or the idea of handshake agreements. You didn't need a contract. We had a handshake agreement. You don't get to leave because you started this.
Yeah.
It's very much.
You don't get to flee to safety while we're about to have the battle.
It's schoolyard rules, right?
What about Battlestone?
It's Battlestone rules.
We have Battlestone coming.
Are you even going to be here for Battlestone? Bro?
No, they're not even going to be there for Battlestone.
They're not going to be there for
Battlestone.
Well,
they're there for Battlestone Train Edition.
The subset of Battlestone.
Train Edition.
Train Edition. Livingston Train Edition.
You have to buy a different pack.
Everyone's going to go have a drink at Murray's across the street. So,
oh my gosh.
And then pick at the sheriff's hemorrhoids with a crab needle, lobster needle. What was it? It was something sick and bizarre.
Needle. Yeah, I'm not remembering it now, but it was like a knitting needle or something.
Yeah, it was picking at my hemorrhoids with something.
Sick, yo, that's so sick.
Last Banner question, and then maybe this is the epitaph for Banner. After all of this, is it hard to have a soft spot for Banner? And was this 7-episode redemption arc enough? Was it enough to redeem the damage that he caused? Because yes, ultimately Whitfield is responsible for all of this, but really Banner started all of this.
Well, Banner's the implementer of
before Whitfield appeared, before the episode, because he's not in episode 1. It was even show up to episode 3 maybe, or 4 even in season 1. Before that, it's Banner just feeling like that he had a right, picking the hemorrhoids of the Duttons, thinking that his sheep had a right to graze where the Duttons had staked their land claim, even though they weren't necessarily using it themselves. So he is really the originator, agitator of all of this. does this season's redemption arc, at the end of the day, when you think back on Banner, will you think of him fondly with a smile? Or will you think of him as that son of a bitch who started all this in the first place?
Well, here's one thing that just in you reviewing the timeline of events made me stop and think, you know, since the Duttons weren't using that land and they were behind on their taxes, wouldn't it have just been smarter and you could have avoided this whole thing had Jacob just sat down with Banner and said, look, we're not using these acres over here. I will rent you my pasture over here.
What if the pasture was a pasture? That would be pasture.
Let's just do this for short term, whatever. I know he's got an issue with the sheep and he feels like the sheep are just like ruin the land.
Eat down to the root.
I've heard. But at the same time, I feel like there was something else that could have happened there had cooler heads prevailed. Had it happened, had they been willing to not be taking, but have a little give and take, I think they could have worked it out because maybe there was something. Maybe Banner could have said, I will provide you guys with wool for the winter or something like that. And you trade me X amount of land. Like they needed that stuff too. They didn't have, they need stuff at the Dutton Ranch. They're not fully stocked, fully perfect all the time. Like there was a lot of stuff that they couldn't pay their taxes. So let me have some of what you have, Banner, and let's work this out.
Lord knows a large budget of the Duttons went towards Jack's sheep pants. They might have been able to get it. They might have been able to get it at cost. Had they had the end of the Banner.
Banner as a supplier.
Banner McCreighton, sheep pants.
Sheep legs.
Sheep legs emporium.
Sheep legs. You too can look like a sheep.
You too cosplay as a sheep.
Oh my god. Sheep.
Jack was a LARPer. He was a sheep LARPer.
He was a LARPer. Turns out he's a furry all along.
He's a live action role playing furry. Elizabeth was banned from the beginning.
None of us understood Jack. That was the thing. And I love furries. Look, me and Mike are con goers, so all you furries out there, we're giving you lots of love. Lovely. But those sheep pants were a mess. Anyway, so going back to the whole, was Banner a good guy? Do I look back at him with a happy heart or a sad heart? I think that he
Do you feel took?
No, I feel good about what he did, actually.
Yeah.
I feel good.
You say Jacob. Jacob be dead. Clyde would have shot him in the back.
Which would have been terrible and cowardly. So
how derpy is the sheriff at the end of the day?
Oh God.
Did you not see him shoot Clyde?
And then he just goes and sits on a bench. Like he's watching the zoo train. No, like he's watching the zoo train go by. He's on one of those little wooden benches.
And then shifts to a seat in the train because he's like, I heard y'all going to Bozeman Hospital. I'm going to have to hitch a ride. And he has the balls to say, I have to deputize you to Spencer, who I give him so much credit for not even acknowledging it. He just took his guns.
All that.
What was he going to say if, no, you can't take my guns? Spencer still would have taken the 6-shooter.
Definitely would have taken everything. But so how do I look back at Banner? I think Banner is a cautionary tale. I think he's a really good example of getting caught up in something when you thought you knew what you were doing, and then all of a sudden somebody takes it, how you say, way too freaking far, and you get caught up in it. The only good news is that he did catch it. He did. Okay, that's the mark of a good man, honestly, right? This is what we tell all of the kids all the time, both my household and yours, which is if you were a bad person, you would never question whether you were good or bad, because bad people don't care if they're good or bad. Right. You know you're good because you wonder if you're good or not. And that's all you need to know you're not bad. So I feel really solid with Banner's storyline, honestly. He had a
true arc.
True, thick, juicy, complicated, complex storyline. So I'm going to look at Banner as, it was great. He did great.
Lamb chop shaped.
Lamb chop shaped?
Like thick lamb chop. Shaped arc. I'm sure he had lambs with the sheep, right? Sheep shank.
Oh, what do you mean you have lambs with the sheep? Lambs are baby sheep.
Yeah, right. So
definitely you have lambs with sheep.
Julep and stuff? No.
Mint julep? No, mint jelly.
Mint jelly.
Mint julep is a dream.
Maybe that sounds delicious with a lamb chop.
Yeah. Kentucky Derby time. Now you're like, man, I could use a Bloody Mary right now.
Amen, sister.
So the girl did this.
Didn't do that. She did this.
Quite the coyote, this girl.
These men, they talk of this girl killing everywhere. But it was the men killing in Oklahoma and the men who killed here. I don't think the girl is the problem.
I think that's the problem. The problem is gone.
Be that as it may, we have a warrant. We have a duty to serve it.
A warrant from a judge we don't know in a territory we don't serve. We didn't ride out here to find a girl, we rode out here to find them. We found them. And good riddance.
Deputy Marshal Clint Patterson is a dick. Sense the tone of the room. CSI Two Spears and Marshal Mamie want to move on. Clint.
I know, Clint. You know what? I was feeling so awesome about Detective Two Spears. I thought he was amazing. Every time when he would go up and be like, look, 2 sets of boots. Look, no boots.
Right. Girl didn't do this. Pete
Girl
didn't do this.
Right. Then it was like, these are priest boots. And it was like, yes. It was so
Y'all can't see it, but there's some awesome hand going
hand
on.
driving.
Some very Minority Report hand
very
driving.
Hand driving. Because I just felt like he was so concise and so on the money. Like he cleared up all the confusion for Mamie.
And as we saw it unfurl, he was dead on.
He was dead on. Dude knew what he was talking about. And that's what I need, that kind of guy working my case, you know?
Right.
And I really loved what we sensed from Two Spears and Mamie from Go was they were going to have some compassion for Tiona.
Right.
And they maintained that compassion. But I thought that they did a really nice job, really, of balancing that with, they were not just pushovers. Like, they were following the law. They were following what they think they saw. Right. Yes. And they weren't like one of those situations where they had a foregone conclusion, like, well, we know you did everything, so we're going to take you away, whatever. Like, they were actually trying to pay attention to the facts, the evidence they could really see. Right. And from what they could see, this was not about the girl. These men were always having all these apparent tussles around the girl. The girl happened to be with them when 2 men would fight.
Right. That clip was important because it actually confirms what we had kind of theorized, that for Marshal Fawcett and Two Spears and Deputy Clint, they actually weren't really tracking Tiona. They were, in fact, tracking Marshal Kent and Father Renaud for the crimes and massacre they had committed at the reservation. Because she says, we were looking for these men. We weren't actually looking for the girl. And that's to remind Dick Clint Patterson, but also the audience, Dick Clint Patterson, but the audience too, making it clear what we had guessed was that they had committed crimes. Those men had committed crimes. They are the problem, which is what Two Spears says, not Tiona. They don't know nothing about what Tiona did. Whatever they said happened up in the Nebraska territory, not their business.
Well, and if you think about it, the priest and Kent, they presented no evidence to Mamie about anything this girl had done. They just said...
They were willing to do the posters. In fact, that's all she said they were willing to do, and they did.
Right.
Deputy Marshal Clint Patterson seemed to think that they still had this duty to issue this warrant. The whole thing is interesting with him because as they're having a conversation, it ends because Mamie sees Tiona on the ridge, which is really just an elevation, and she fires. And that sets in motion this entire horse chase, which I couldn't play the clip because it was very long, but Marshal Fawcett is screaming, "Deputy, do not fire," and he fires. Yeah. She fired on us. He screams back at his boss.
Right.
She is the marshal, so there ends up being a little misogyny here. She is your you are a deputy marshal. And she says again, "Marshal, do not fire," and he fires, and Tiona ends up shooting him in the chest, though he's trying to shoot her point blank at the time. Yes. She just happens to get the shot off. I think it is very telling that when they eventually go to trial and Tiona is acquitted, they do not add this murder to her charges, and they very could. They were very obviously witnesses. They were the only witnesses, apparently, that are still alive to any of the crimes involved here.
Which is not true, because obviously all of the girls and the nuns...
I'm saying, or the stuff that's happened down here in Texas, right.
But the way that the judge just was like, you deal with it down there, with whomever
he's like, I don't want Nebraska's business here, and there's nothing that's gone on here that involves this girl or this court, so you get out of here. But I think it's telling. I think it's telling at the end of the day that Marshal Fawcett was so maybe angry at Clint, and really, had he listened to her, maybe he is still alive. Maybe Tiona stops firing at him or something. But the fact that, and there's no Two Spears says, what do we do about him? And she's like, boots and badge. No burial for this is a deputy marshal. This is a guy that apparently three of them have been riding around together. Apparently they must have had some kind of relationship. And he so shit the bed in this moment and was not on page. That's why I came out of the clip saying he's a dick, because he was so either caught up with the man versus woman thing or just taking the law to its absurdist conclusion, which doesn't make sense in the situation. Like, use your eyes, man. Look what's happening here. This girl is not the one doing these things. She's reacting to the situation. It wasn't she burned, stabbed, and shot Father Renaud, and then Father Renaud killed her dad in his sleep. Right. That's not the order of events. It's Pete and Kent were killed by the priest, who then killed Runs' horse, who then probably did something to Tiona that she then reacted. It's all self-defense, which you had a great reaction to this. When Marshall Fawcett finally gets a hold of Tiona, she's like, so they lied? So you've never killed? We're going to play this clip in a second. She's like, oh no, I've killed. And then she's like, I killed the nuns. I killed, and like, she goes off the list like 7 people that she's killed. And like, good God, woman, stop talking. But I think it was so telling to me that in the court scene that Marshall Fawcett and obviously Two Spears didn't speak up and be like, well, we do need to add the murder of Deputy Marshal Clint Patterson. No. Don't ask where he is. Here's his boots and badge. He's off on a walkabout. Like, that doesn't come up. Like, he's out in the desert somewhere. Right. But I think that is very telling. But let's listen to this clip, because I was rolling my eyes when Marshall Fawcett is trying to sell the justice system to Tiona, which really, I think, illuminates that Marshall Fawcett really has no idea what Tiona has been through the last 2 seasons of the show, the last 6 months of the show that we've watched. But let's listen to this clip and then listen to how Tiona, she gets the incredulity of like, you sound ridiculous. You don't know what I've been through. Witnesses. Let's take a listen.
I don't choose who gets the noose or who goes to prison. It's for a judge to decide. If you're innocent, he'll give you a chance to prove it.
Prove how?
Through testimony. Through witnesses.
What witnesses? The nuns who raped me? The priest who beat me and put me in an oven to cook because I don't know how to make soap? Won't eat maggots? Won't let them put their fingers inside me? And who speaks for me? Which relative will they dig from their grave to speak for me?
What is she talking about?
The Indian schools. I know those schools. Know those priests. I don't know her path, but I know that path.
And that's when she goes on to be like, so you never killed, they lied? And she's like, no. I've killed plenty of people. So
I do want to stop and say that maybe I appreciated having the moment of clarity and saying, okay, wait, what is she talking about? Not what normally would happen is they'd be like, shut your mouth. I don't want to hear this nonsense, right? That's immediately what would happen in a TV show now. Mm-hmm. So the idea that she was like, okay, what is she talking about? Like, let's put this into context. And then I loved how he was like, I don't know her story, but I know that story. That was like, God, I mean, Detective Two Spears is the guy we needed all along. He is the one explaining everything and shedding light, and is respected enough that she stops and is like, I am going to listen to what this guy has to say.
Well, I think it also shows her respect for not only the Native American people, which she says from early on that she has a relationship out there. And if you don't have a relationship, she says to Ken, you're not going to survive out there. But she clearly has it for CSI Two Spears, this relationship and this respect, which is in short supply on the show.
Absolutely. So, I appreciated that, sometimes you guys, I cannot stand how graphic things can get in the writing. Sometimes it's not for me. But when Tiona says, I wouldn't let them put their fingers inside me, I mean, I hope that every audience member did wince. I hope everybody felt horrible in their stomach. And because they didn't make her, because she didn't know how to make soap. I love that she added that. Put me in an oven to cook.
Because they didn't know how to make soap, because it's such a dumb thing to punish anyone to any degree about. Right. But to put her in an oven to cook, which we saw. Yeah. We saw that scene.
We saw where everything was, yeah. So, I mean, overall, I feel like Mamie's explanation of the justice system and then her moment of understanding, real understanding that this doesn't exist for this girl and that she showed up. She didn't necessarily have to show up at court.
Right.
I mean, I know for the sake of writing a good shot and you need some people in the courtroom and all that kind of stuff.
Well, they kind of take her under the, like, they kind of like adopt as a protector of her.
Which is fascinating. And I'm super glad that it did. Now, how it actually ends up with Tiona, I was really pleased that everything was thrown out. Like, I was like, thank God.
Trust in the court system does work, as it turns out. Because
for this particular case.
It's less than 2 minutes, start to finish. And if the prosecution actually makes the motion to withdraw, because he realizes there's no one here to talk about anything that we're here to talk about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The witness is dead, because even the judge says, is the girl implicated in why the 2 witnesses are dead because you're handing me their death certificates? They're like, no, that's a separate matter, not related to this girl. So 2 minutes, and so the system did in fact work, which helps, I think, reinforce why Marshall Fawcett has the view she has and justifies it, that she can present that statement with a straight face, even though she's presenting it to someone who has no reason to believe her. But she believes it because it does work here. I'm not the one who makes a decision about the noose. I'm just bringing you in, and the system, trust the system.
Now, in a way, I mean, I appreciate you saying the system worked, but if you look at it from a completely neutral, objective way, and again, don't talk about what the nuns did, right? Whether they deserved it or not, they are dead, right? And she is not held accountable in any way, really, right? So the system working is a little
The system worked the way we wanted it to work.
It worked out for Tiona.
Yes.
But it was a janky system.
The magistrate from where the mission school is kicks it down in the can, which I think pisses off this judge. But I feel like we've seen plenty of judges who would have taken the opportunity, especially the racist ones or the miscegenation ones, that would have been like, let's string her up. This is a juicy kind of thing. I believe in the mission schools and what they do.
Yeah.
And we can't have, the natives hanging and murdering and burning and stabbing all of our religious brethren. You could have easily gotten that judge.
That's true.
This guy was, my docket is busy with Texas cases. I don't need any of your nonsense. Let's just get going. So they go outside, and we're going to play this last clip here, which I think really ties to the last episode and what I said was a series theme of the Duntons' existence of There's Always More Whitfields. I think this final clip here between Tiona and CSI2 Spears is great. But I have to note that they go outside. Tiona just looks around. She's like, I don't know what to do now. And Marshall Fawcett, with a very straight face, says, "We'd sure like it if you leave." And I've watched that scene like 7 times in preparation for writing, taking my notes and then pulling audio. And it made me laugh every single time. "We'd sure like it if you leave." Best line maybe of the episode, because God, we've had enough of everything you brought down here, a whole lot of Montanans. I think Marshall Fawcett has had enough of Montanans.
I think so too.
Let's listen to this final clip between CSI2 Spears and Tiona.
Tiona! You were right to fight back.
Maybe. But it cost me everything.
Always does.
This is the Dunton experience. It costs you everything. It always does. So you may have been right to turn back. And she says, maybe I was right to turn back, but it cost me everything in doing so. Now I want to go circle back to that, because I had been, from a dad point of view, I had been advocating run to this horse's position of keep running until you are out of country to run to, because the system is rigged against you and it just wants to hurt you. It just wants to kill you. But you had made the point, and Tiona listened to you off screen. At some point, you do have to turn and fight. Now, seeing how this all played out and seeing that whatever role Tiona Rainwater may have in the future of the Yellowstone universe, was that good advice for her to do? Was she smart to stand on that bluff, on that elevation, and take that shot and turn and fight?
I think she had to. I think that is the message of all of this, honestly, is that at the end of the day, at some point, you're going to have to turn and fight. I mean, look at the Duntons, how long they could run from Whitfield. They could play games with paperwork. They could play games with taxes. They could hide Jacob. They could send Kara to the meetings. Like, they could play a lot of games, but at the end of the day, they had to turn and fight. They had to stop running. And so, yeah, I maintain my feelings in that moment. I mean, when they saw the little glint of, it was the sun that hit her gun out in the thing, every part of me was like, and that's that's her innocence. That's her naivete. Because...
Well, she's not CSI Two Spears.
But you would know to probably put something on your gun to
position yourself.
Block it. Yeah, put something on top, whatever. I would
she was
imagine
just reacting.
you might put a little mud or something on the metal. Right. I don't know what. I'm not a hunter, so I don't know what you do, but... Dang, I just felt like, no ghillie suits. But I felt for her. I really did. I think that she was brave as hell. This end scene, I wish they had given her some money or some more supplies, because that was the one thing that I felt a little sensitive about, that I kind of felt like they were setting her up to instantly have to be a thief in order to survive. And I really hated that part for her, because I wanted them to give her enough supplies that she could actually start on a good path. You know, like enough food that you could have a shot at seeing deer to actually kill, but that would take a couple days maybe, you know, and water. They didn't give her any water, you know, like some like basic stuff like that I just wish we had seen them give her like a whole backpack or something. That would have felt better. But, you know, I guess for this day and age, we should just feel really good that, again, I mean, going back to sort of like it takes a village, right? I mean, it ends up taking how many different people did Tiona meet along the way that ultimately, maybe they couldn't be her savior, but in that moment, they couldn't save her from everything. But and they all were men for the most part, except for Mamie, like took her along the path and did nurture her and did protect her as much as they could. But at the end of the day, it was all on her shoulders. Right. She had to be the one to actually...
strong female, you mean?
A strong female. Yeah.
Which, again, going back to the clip from Runs This Horse, the last thing he says to her when she's like, why even bother continue living? And he says, you have to survive. If you don't survive, they will forget we were here. Mm-hmm. As far as we know... and maybe 1944 will address this, maybe a future installment will address this, she may be the last Rainwater. But we know the Rainwaters are still alive in the main line of Yellowstone, and so she literally needs to be a resilient, strong female character, or this line of people will have disappeared and no one will ever talk about it. Mamie will talk about it with Two Spears, remember that crazy lady that killed all those people and that other people were chasing her and trying to kill and killed a bunch of people? What a weird, wild turn that was. But otherwise, no one's going to remember Tiona.
Okay, do we think she's pregnant with Pete's kid?
I think that's a fair bet.
Okay, so
I think that's a fair
I'm asking that because, I mean, I felt like, you know, they were always trying to dress her like a boy, so it's hard to tell. And honestly, if you looked at anybody who was supposed to be pregnant, whether it be Elizabeth or Alex, or even, let's say, nobody looks pregnant. Nobody ever had a pregnant belly, you know?
Right, but Alex got pregnant in season 1, which had a very large time jump, though, to begin showing, which she never, in fact, does, though.
No.
Spencer does, we're going to talk about actually pretty quick soon, but he does make fun of how much weight she has gained. Since
probably 5 pounds or something.
Whatever, yeah. Big hunter that he is. He compares her to an elk quarter. But Tiona having, as far as we know, only the one time with Pete was just a few days ago in the show's timeline. They were just in running the herd out of the valley, you know, at the JR Ranch.
Well, so I'm assuming though that she's pregnant.
I think that's a great assumption because
that gets us to a 1944
and that puts a kid in their 20s, the storyline, which we don't actually know how old Thomas Rainwater is, but if he
seems like a contemporary to
if he's
John.
even like 10 years older, somewhere in 1 to 10 years older than John, Kevin Costner and John Dutton, then Tiona's child would then give birth to Thomas Rainwater. This kid can't be Thomas Rainwater because it would make him ancient by the time mainline Yellowstone, and even if he's older, he's not that.
But there's a path.
But there's a path.
Easily.
There's a path, and the last name being what the last name is, and all these names are so tribal and specific that I imagine that any Rainwater has to be a family tree. I think there are a lot of people out there that are still confused about how Tiona plays into it. I don't think she's really supposed to be part of the Dutton story. I think she's supposed to be part of the Yellowstone story.
Yeah.
And I think the point of, we don't know how she connected to them. I don't think that was the point ever. I think it was a parallel experience to what Alex and Spencer and their journey and running from, and Elizabeth and Jack, like they were all in these parallel journeys of going from a place to another place and outrunning and outlasting and outwitting everyone, chasing a survivor rules,
exactly.
Paramount synergy. I think all of that was her point. There is a Native American population in the mainline Yellowstone universe. There was a Native population, Graham Greene, who was just inducted into the Cowboy Hall of Fame. He's the Native American we deal with in 1883 who tells them about Paradise Valley. Their story is a parallel story. It's not part of the Duns. It's part of the Yellowstone story.
One of the things that you and I cannot appreciate is for those people who maybe picked up this show when 1883 came out and have only been watching it 1883 now to 1923. And if you haven't had the benefit of being able to watch anything about the mainline Yellowstone, I can see where Tiona is confusing. I mean, she really does seem like an outlier.
And still emotionally exhausting, too, if otherwise.
Because it was a difficult storyline, for sure. So wrapping Tiona up, because we do need to, overall, what do you feel about, how did they do her storyline justice? Do you feel good about the way that they really did expose the how they described them, the Indian schools? Is that what they called them?
Mission schools.
Mission schools. And that how they sort of just exposed all of that.
I think it's such a bright line distinction from the Whitfield scenes, which were so hard to watch and unnecessary, because you could have expressed that same lesson that any of the 3 lessons or so that we took from it, you could have done differently than how you showed it to us. I think you can only get the experience of the Native American population in this time period specifically by showing us the horrors that she went through. And I think over the course of the 2 seasons, her storyline was, if nothing else, extremely important and educational for a population that largely does not know this history. I did not learn the ins and outs of Native American history. I learned about the Indian schools and mission schools. I learned about actually via Canada's experience of it in reading about it, and only just the last few years where I was very much an adult. It was something I had never heard about before. And, Spencer's going to tell the boy on the train, little Tucker on the train, the story I learned of, Custer's Last Stand and the Battle of Little Bighorn, probably not the same story that Native American populations tell their children when they pass down that tradition. They pass down that story of their interactions with the white man and the U.S. government. So, yeah, I think they did an excellent job with it. I think Taylor has always shown a really good dedication to exposing the Native American experience in a parallel sense and the way it intersects with the Western frontierism of this time, in the modern time as well as in the behind time. Rough, emotionally exhausting, really hard to watch at some points, but I think ultimately an extremely important story to tell, because it is a real story. It's like CSI Two-Spear says, I don't know her path, but I know this story. I don't know her story, but I know this story. And now we viewers know this story because this is a real story. Maybe Tiona Raymore is not real, but her experiences, I think, are real.
What did you think about how, now that you kind of put the 2 seasons together, because the first season was when we saw so much of her abuse.
Right.
Whereas the second season is where we saw so much of the sex worker abuse.
Right.
Do you think that anything about showing the sex worker portion, I'm trying to think about how we compare and contrast the use of showing us abuse in the school setting versus showing us the abuse with Whitfield, and the fact that these were all women and these were all in these classes of people who are having to endure this suffering and whatnot. I'm trying to figure out, does it enhance, look at all the things that women were going through and show all these different things, or does it somehow, it's so weird, I don't know how to say it. It's it makes me feel...
I think I know what you're trying to get at.
Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Because we talk about this when you and I talk about, Handmaid's Tale, and we talk about Aunt Lydia. She's a true believer, and she condones and participates in horrible treatment of the handmaids because she believes in what she is doing and what the doctrine is in which she lives. The nuns and the priest and Father Renaud, for the most part, believe what they're doing. They believe in the holiness and sanctity of what they're doing. That righteousness and salvation only comes from being put in line in the way that which they're trying to put them in line. And those that won't fall in line deserve the damnation and the suffering upon which we will level at them. That's not a question of right and wrong. I think it's pretty clear we think it's wrong. But from their point of view, they believe in what they're doing. They are true believers. Whitfield, Banner says it perfectly, he's just doing it just for the suffering of it. He doesn't believe in anything. He just wants to make people hurt.
So what I'm trying to figure out is, did the Whitfield storyline help or hurt this storyline?
My worry is that it hurts it because people won't take the time to think about the two of them indistinctly or as being distinct storylines. That's my worry. My worry is that that's the show where they torture women. Nuns rape girls and prostitutes torture each other.
Right.
That does a disservice to the Native American storyline and the experience that Tiona went through. It would be a shame if people just watch this and lump them all together.
That's what I'm afraid of. That's what I was.
I think you're very right to be afraid.
I was just starting to feel that vibe of wait a minute.
You're not the only one who is like, I can't watch this. The problem is you have to watch the Tiona stuff.
Right. Which I did, to be fair, you guys.
You
I totally
you absolutely did.
I did not close my eyes for that.
But so many people would be like, this is all the same. This
that's
is
what I'm
all the same.
scared of.
And that is a problem. And if you are out there listening, please go back and watch Tiona's scenes and take education from it. Watch hard things because there's utility there and there's education there and there is human experience that you need to understand really happened. This is not bullshit. This is not fiction. This is a real story that happened to countless people up until the 90s. These schools, there's still some of these schools that are still open, but these atrocities were still happening in the 90s.
When you say 90s, you mean
the 1990s. There are accounts of these things happening to students at these schools in Canada and the US in the 1990s still.
Now, and we have to be fair. When we're talking about the sex worker portion, people would say, look, that's also a real story. And that's a real, authentic, life that somebody has lived. My issue with it from an audience standpoint is I don't want there to be a desensitizing to hurting women. And you're doing this game of closing your eyes every other scene because like we were saying, like they're basically equating like anytime a woman gets hit, whether it's
I've had enough.
in Indian school or whether it's in Whitfield, I don't want to watch it anymore. And the thing is that it's like, I don't want people to close their eyes for the Tiona scenes because he has done too much and piled too much on.
Here's a great example. In this episode, we see Lindy, pleasuring Mabel, and then Whitfield pours the scalding hot water down her back. Now, that is not being done to show the plight of the sex worker. That's not why Taylor's writing that scene. Taylor's writing that scene so you understand the joy Whitfield takes in exerting suffering on other people. We very easily could have seen the nuns pour scalding hot water down Tiona or any of her cousin or any of the girls at that school, and they would have been doing it as a lesson that the Native American population, the non-believers, needed to suffer in order to bring them in line to Jesus. One would have been intentional and educational. One would have been to show Whitfield's motivation. That's the difference. It's not putting down the sex worker experience, which there is rife with abuse and torture and everything. But that's not why Taylor's writing that. He's not writing. Otherwise, Lindy would have been written differently. Otherwise, Lindy would have stabbed Whitfield ultimately.
Yeah.
She wouldn't have grabbed a knife and screamed and gone at Spencer. She would have been like, finally, and turned and took the knife to Whitfield.
How satisfying would that have been? You guys, that would have
recharacterized what we saw here.
That would have been the most satisfying ending for Whitfield. Honestly,
not why Taylor was writing that.
It would have been if she turned, grabbed his hair, and sliced his throat. Right. That would have been freaking amazing.
A liberator.
Now, I want to be really clear, and I want to be cautious on this because this is a long podcast for us, and we are talking to you guys very off the cuff. And so there are things that we're saying when we're talking about this abuse that I don't want anyone to pick apart and feel like you're acting like it's educational to be abused in an Indian school or whatever. Like, because that's what we just said, but we don't agree with that. It's just that that's the way that it looks like.
These are things that happen to people in the last 100 years, and the show is showing you that these things happen. Because I think one of the most common things I have read about the show over the 2 years that it's been on the air is, why did they have to do why those scenes with the Indian school? Why did we have to see that? And other people write.
And as they got deeper into the Whitfield story, why do we have to keep seeing the sex workers?
And people, would be like, well, these things happened to Native Americans, girls and boys at these schools. They were taken from their families. They were endorsed by the government. It wasn't like it was happening in a vacuum and the government didn't know.
No, this was institutionalized.
It was institutionalized. These religious organizations, or the air quotes, with government backing, were taking children from their home and indoctrinating them this way. That was a real thing. And so it's not, the abuse is not educational. The story, the thing they're trying to teach you about, these really happened to a population that exists pretty recently. Maybe if he writes the sex worker storyline from the plight of the sex worker and the abuse of the sex worker, then you could say that's an educational, at least, but I never got
by
even
educational, that just means like us, the audience, being exposed
if you don't
to
know
this walk of life.
If you don't know what sex workers go through, here are things sex workers go through.
That could happen to them.
Right. But I never got the impression that's what Taylor remotely wanted us to take away from that, though, because it would have gone so much differently had that been what he'd been trying to. It was really what Banner was talking about. The point of it was what Banner was talking about was just he can, and so he will, because he likes to watch people suffer.
Right.
And what are these women going to do?
So here's hoping, you guys, that for those people who are just picking this series up, that they don't lump all that together and just say, well, that's just a bunch of, sad suffering, but they really do take a moment to appreciate the importance of Tiana's storyline and really don't close your eyes to it. Really watch it. And if you didn't watch it, go back and watch it and make sure you understand who her character was supposed to represent.
Right. We probably need like a Tiona, mega cut across the 2 seasons and just see, cause she also had an arc though too. Cause,
of course,
from where she started, and not necessarily a happy arc by any means, because everyone is dead now that she loved, but she's still alive at the end of it. She persevered through all of it. And there's hope and optimism in that, which is all Runs This Horse was trying to explain to her in that final conversation was whatever happens, you need to live because through you, our story continues.
I'm sorry, Spencer. This is your plan. This is your plan for us. Let us know love. Then reap it from us. Then give us a child. Then drag me through hell to freeze hours from him. What kind of God does that?
All right, we're into Alex and Spencer now, and this is how we begin their reunification. I gotta tell you, I was really moved by the letters being used here in this scene and the fact she apologizes, but also these letters, like we said earlier in this episode, like they were the catalyst to put them on this mission. It was in Zanzibar. Spencer hadn't ever opened any of these letters. He wasn't aware of anything happening back in Montana. These letters have been so important to the story, and for whatever reason, I've really taken to them. As this, when she gets attacked in Grand Central Station, a couple episodes ago, like I really pointed to the fact that the letters had been here, and now she burns this first one, but then ultimately burns the car, and now all the letters are gone. But the letters literally saved her life.
They did.
That's pretty awesome. Like, why were the letters important?
It's like Kara saved her life.
Yeah, like Kara saved her life. They literally saved her life in the end. I really like this clip more because it really brought the circle back around to, we've seen several times this season, Alex questioning God. And what kind of God does this? And this is an Elsa thing from 1883 for those that watched it. This idea of why does God let things happen? Why does nature let things happen? Nature doesn't care about you. Nature's different, right? But God is supposed to care about you, and yet you get me this far to have me die just hours from him. What kind of, you show us the love, like you show a little ankle and take it right back. You bring us on this journey just to kill me here. Mm-hmm. I feel all of her anguish and pain in this scene.
I absolutely did too. I think that the actress, Julia
Schlaepfer,
did wonderful in her job of really showing this desperation. I don't know if I would have handled everything exactly how Alex did in terms of like, I think I would have gathered more stuff off of Paul and Hillary to burn and stuff. It turns out it doesn't matter. It turns out like she had enough at the time.
Well, she remembers getting a flask. At the end, she remembers they have the flask and digs through
and
Hillary's
like the perfume
very
stuff too.
To start, and then to make the conflagration that burns the whole car, she goes back and digs and like really has to move Hillary, which I'm curious if that was a dummy or if they really had the actress back there, like still in the makeup for this scene. They must have just all shot it at once. But they like pull her up and like she digs in for the flask that they had been drinking from while they were driving. And that she sprinkles the whatever's left of it. Alcohol has a much lower freeze rate, right? So, and then that's what sends the car up. But it is funny because later on, when her and Spencer are running towards each other, they run. Her scarf actually blows off right next to dead Paul in the snow's body. Ugh. So he's just kind of there, like a lawn ornament. But
we've left a lot of dead bodies across
a lot of dead
land.
bodies. I mean, at least Hillary got cremated in the end, but Paul will just be carried.
Oh Lord. Okay. So this God comment, I think that for me, everything that Taylor does always brings this sort of God/nature. And they're not the same thing. They're not the same entity at all. But I feel like God gets aligned sort of more with hope, I think. It's like more about faith, feelings, God, hope, all this way. And nature, like we said, is indifferent. Like it's not trying to kill you, but it's not trying to save you, and it's not going to save you. Like, it doesn't give a crap about you.
It just cares about itself persisting. That's all it cares about.
It is just about survival. You know, how do you feel about Alex and Spencer's overall story that God made it end the way that it did? And I know we're going to get into more of the details, but I mean, just was it enough for you? Because they kept trying to tell us it was enough for Alex. They kept trying to tell us in words.
Very explicit.
It was enough for Alex. This life and his love was all enough for her. So is it quantity of life or quality of life, or do you get both?
I think you have to be okay with the quality because it's really the only part you can control.
Okay.
You don't get to control the length, right? I have a policy. I don't go to bed before I tell my loved ones I love them. The length is not promised. It's not. And so you really have to make hay with the quality. And these two did. And we were robbed of so much time. We were robbed of these two. I love them together. In the second here, we're going to play their reunited clip. And they're just right back at it. And I was smiling. I was so happy. But later on, I have a comment in here in all capitals that we were robbed of a lifetime of Alex conversations with Jacob and Kara. And just in their little interaction between Jacob and Alex, I feel angry that we were robbed of that quantity of time. But you have to then enjoy the quality of it, right? It's the better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. What would Alex's life have been if she had married that dweeb back in Africa?
Right.
Even ending this way.
It would have been safe and comfortable.
And dreadfully dull and boring.
Yeah.
And like a million other peerage heiresses. No one in her world has ever gotten to live the life that Alex got to live in this last 6 months.
Yeah. I know we're going to talk about
something.
We're going to talk about how Alex made the decision she did and all that. But let's talk about the drama of Alex, jumping around in the snow and Spencer running off the back of the train. What did you think about how that worked out?
Before we get that, though, because I want to just in time, I want to talk about Spencer because Spencer has this interaction right before they come across the burning car. He has this interaction with this little boy whose name is Tucker. Tucker and Madeline is the mother. Mother is bouncing like a little baby. Tucker is trying to exchange his pocket knife that he says his mother doesn't know he has. She does. She does some great eye rolling.
Moms always know.
Moms always know. And Spencer has the lion's tooth, but he gives it to this boy after saying, and we've heard this before, that he was saving this lion's tooth to give to his son. So what's the significance here of Spencer giving this lion's tooth to Tucker? What does it mean that he's willing to part with this thing that he was saving? And it wasn't because he didn't have a son yet, as far as he knew. He never had a son, but yet he was still saving it for that future date. Was this him somehow maybe doubting that he would be reunited with Alex? Is this his concession to, I'm not meant to have a son? Maybe I don't make it out of this war that I'm walking into at the Battlestone. And so maybe the lion's tooth goes to somewhere. There's a significance here because it was too important to him to just give to this random annoying boy on the train, who actually I thought was very adorable.
I thought Tucker was really adorable. And actually, because he's named and because that lion's tooth was given to him, wouldn't it be fascinating to see a man wearing a lion's tooth later?
Yeah.
An adult
I really
man
thought we were
in
going to see
1944.
I really thought we were going to see the pocket knife again, actually.
Yeah, I like that.
The pocket knife was going to come back to play.
Wouldn't that have been amazing if it saved the day in some way?
Yeah, like he uses it to unclog a gun or stick one of the bad guys or something, you know?
I like that. I like all that. I don't know. I know that we brought it up when we saw it and we both said, like, what did it mean? Did it mean like he had given up hope for like ever having a kiddo? Did it mean that he had kind of given up this whole African dream part? Maybe the whole idea of handing that part over to his legacy was no longer as important because maybe the Battlestone turns out to be his lifelong legacy. Right. So what he thought was his legacy was this lion's tooth, and maybe now in this moment it's changing. What his legacy is changing.
Well, that's an interesting part of the journey, though, because you think about his time through the ship, the Italian merchant ship, and then in Galveston with the mobsters, and you know, the run-in with the police, the Fort Worth police, and then his first interaction with Marshall Fawcett. It was always, I was a hunter in Africa, the lion's tooth, the gun. All in the past, though. That's all memory now. That's not the dream. Mm-mm. The dream is ahead of him. The dream is whatever is going to come after the battle for Yellowstone. So maybe it is him closing the chapter. But he was the one who had connected the past of this life as a hunter when he was not going home after the war to a son, which would be sometime in the future, presumably at home that he had avoided for so long. So maybe giving the lion's tooth was really like him ready to re-enter life in Montana.
I think he
had been away for so long and for so many years, and one of his themes in this journey was that this country I've returned to is not the country I left. There were no roads, there was no electricity, there was no prohibition, there were no cars,
the treatment of the soldiers.
And the treatment of the soldiers, the rules, the amount of rules. I can't have my gun with me, my elephant gun.
right.
You know, and so maybe the lion's tooth was him literally giving away this vestige of a life. He was acknowledging, I'm not in Africa anymore.
And I'm not.
This is not a world of elephant guns.
My legacy is not going to be
African
that I killed a lion.
Big game hunter.
That's not going to be it. It's going to be something else. And so that's what I'm going to go with.
But then here's the little kicker to it, though. The very last line of the scene before he turns and sees out the window the car on fire, Tucker snickers and says, "You got suckered," which I'm curious if suckered was a phrase in 1923. And Spencer looks a little forlorn, a little like, you know, he kind of laughs, but he's not happy. And he says, "You may be right." I'm wondering if he has immediate regret, which then makes me think that the lion's tooth really was some commentary about, I'm not going to have a son. And so then the realization of, I've given that away. What does that actually mean for me?
I'm willing to continue on with my train of thought that, like, I think that those exact words of "you may be right," he traded in the life of an African safari hunter for a rancher that's married with kids and blah, 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 right? And so it's like, is that the suckering? Like, you were this amazing hunter that everyone was like chasing after.
Whitfield,
and now,
man meant to wander, insatiable, inexplicable
like
need to wander.
Supposedly, like in like the dream situation, and then now
you were
maybe got suckered into coming back home and living this kind of like, I don't know, far less glamorous life.
You were literally the apex predator, you know, the animal meant to wander, and now you are chaining yourself to this life.
Mm-hmm. So that's what I think. I think it could be you got suckered because like you got married and you settled down. Ha, they got you.
That also seems like a Taylor for sure.
Although he doesn't bag on marriage.
He doesn't, but we don't see a lot of great marriages, not like Karen Jacob. They're
Oh, is that true?
Well, let's think about it.
I would say that James and Margaret
were good. I guess Casey and Monica kind of make it through.
I think they're good, yeah. I would say Rip and Beth, while unconventional, truly love each other.
Works for them.
They love each other.
Sure.
Allison, Zane, he's kind and loving and smart and cool.
All right, so, well, maybe that's not the commentary then, but maybe it's more about, I'm committing to this unknown. I know my life. I know who I am as big game African hunter. And I'm pushing in my chips on this new life because he's never lived this life, right? Spencer,
yeah, but that's by all accounts more boring and safer.
For sure, but Spencer, who went off to war, was not the man Spencer coming home to run this ranch. He was a boy who was not yet ready to run a ranch when he left. Now he is a man, full grown, which obviously he was a man when he left because of what his age that he must be, but it's different. Wars changed him. His life experience has changed him. Alex has changed him.
His position in the family has changed. When he left, Jacob and Kara,
he's the younger brother. I mean, even his brother, his brother was still there. His brother was the one.
That's true.
He was the little brother. Little brothers don't inherit the giant family ranch.
True.
Jack's father was meant to inherit that ranch. John Sr., original
Which you
John
guys
Sr.
all remembering died. You guys all remember.
He died in the forest ambush with the Tommy gun.
Yes.
Yeah, so moving on. So you asked, when he runs down, he sees Alex, he starts calling her name, and he starts doing the Tom Cruise run down the train. The sound dropping out as he leaps off the back, cinema. Perfect cinema. And the attendant who we had seen, we had a little bit of relationship with the attendant because he was the one who was asking him about where he had served and about Argonne. His face, his jaw just drops open, but then the music kicks in and he's running down the tracks.
It was very well done.
Like Whitfield getting shot finally. Like, who is not like, hands in the air, you know?
I agree. That was a very exciting moment for an audience member. And I think having that moment of silence actually allowed the collective gasp. Like every single audience member and cast
so
member,
perfectly.
They went like, oh, and it was silent, like right when you all did that. And it was awesome.
He just drops from view.
I don't even care the plausibility of jumping off the back of a train. I don't care. I don't care if he would have broke his legs, his ankles, whatever people are coming to say for us. I don't care. I wanted this running to each other scene for sure. I loved it. I loved their back and forth, their banter, immediately hilarious. And if we go back with the idea that having to watch all the suffering makes the pleasurable parts better, then I will say we were hungry for conversation between Spencer and Alex.
You sent smoke signals to my train.
You leapt from the train.
I leapt from the train.
Did you by chance ask the train to wait for us?
No, it slipped my mind.
So train is continuing in the opposite direction?
Yeah, it's a pretty good guess.
Well, so good of you to join me in this pickle, free from the burden of a solution.
I don't know what that means.
It's an insult, my love.
I have a solution.
I'm all ears.
Big timber's 3 miles from here. I'm gonna carry you.
Carry me?
I've carried an elk quarter farther.
I don't know what an elk quarter is, but I assume very heavy and a testament to your swarthiness.
Heavier than you, but not by much. You've been well on this journey, my love.
You may carry me from certain death, sir, but you may not joke about my weight while doing it. It's your fault, you know.
My fault.
I suppose he'll be tall like you.
What a way to find out you are about to be a dad. I mean, the jokes about the weight and the swarting, a testament to your swarthiness. Who doesn't want to hear these two talk to each other? And
no,
the way she phrases things, and he's just confused. He's like, I don't know what that means.
I don't know.
It's an insult, my love. It's just so good. It's so good. I miss them so much.
It was great writing. And, for all the things we say about Taylor and different dialogue moments, this one, spot on, dude. You got it.
Yeah. And I don't doubt that he would absolutely carry her 3 miles to Big Timber.
Yes.
And he goes up the snowbank carrying her.
Like it was nothing.
Like it was nothing back to the railroad tracks. Like,
yeah.
Has you guys ever tried to go uphill in a snowbank, of like waist-high snowbank? It's not fun.
It would be insane. Without being able to use your hands.
Right, because they're carrying your wife.
Right.
So we get to the train. Of course, we have a Dr. Andrew who's gonna, we talked about a little bit about him before. We played his miracle cure. He, like the doctor in Ellis Island, discovers without her saying that she's pregnant. She says she's 6 months pregnant. He gives that women's bodies are a testament to their miracle and that if there's a way to save the baby, they'll do it. But I was taken, among all things here, that Spencer takes the moment to really roast his wife. And maybe still thinking about the fact that she didn't understand her comment about being in a pickle and a solution, burden, what is it, free from the burden of a solution? Yeah. He gives this sick burn right here.
What do we do about the shivers?
Shivers, good. Is her body trying to warm? Was she shivering when you found her? Was she disoriented?
Disoriented how?
Saying things that are illogical or don't make sense.
Well, she does that anyway.
I can't hear you.
I mean, Spencer, come on, time and place. Like, she's... Like, her fingers are literally black, like, to the touch as her feet. Calling her ditzy is not a great moment.
He was calling her ditzy. I think he didn't understand half the things she said.
Absolutely.
Truly just makes him...
It's very like, Sam and Diane?
Oh, yeah.
They're very Sam and Diane. For those of you of an age from Cheers, that used to watch Cheers.
They have that dynamic, that's true.
I don't think Sam would have been able to carry her 3 miles to Big Timber.
Yes, he would.
You think so?
Yes.
Man.
Are you kidding me? I've seen Ted Danson recently. That man could carry me anywhere.
Lord, okay.
He is tall and strong and handsome. He was just at ETX last year. He was wonderful.
Spencer says when they have a quiet moment together, he says, you didn't have to do any of this. I was going to come for you. She has a great line. She says, but if you were to fall in love with someone else, how would I be able to kill her from England?
I love that.
It
sounds like love? Something I would say.
It feels like true love to me, guys. But the war and life and the reason why Spencer's here, the reason why Alex is here, it's not far from impeding into this moment. And Spencer literally sees guns being drawn, all of these men gathering on the station. And in fact, actually, the very first shot is Clyde, the traitorous commission livestock officer, shooting from the platform into the train, trying to get Spencer.
I was really surprised that he did that.
That was the first shot? Like, a moving train? That's an ill-fated shot, too.
It is, and it seemed
but he was high on his supply, though, from killing Jack, remember? Yes. If you're the number 2, I'm not worried about the number 1.
No, facts. But I just feel like it was like, I know they weren't worried about hiding or anything, for God's sake. No one was worried about a true ambush here. Everyone was out in the open, guns out, everyone's pulling back their jackets.
Right.
Nobody's hiding the
fact
that they're
Only 6 people
packing.
on that platform were not part of this war.
Exactly. And they were like women and children. Right. Like, that was it. And so this was a rough moment. I appreciated all of the preparations for this moment, though, like Jacob trying to keep an eye on all the travelers, Spencer's trying to keep an eye outside, he's noticing all the guns, right? And he doesn't know that there's an ambush going on, but he's got his head on straight, he's paying attention. And then we have, don't forget Banner's wife. We've got Banner's wife paying attention. We've got the Banner storyline, all that stuff, just happening all on top of each other at that train station. And all I was like, is like, if Jacob goes down in this, I'm going to freak the fuck out. Because he was the one that seemed like, are we going to save Alex in lieu of Jacob at this moment?
Right.
Is that what's going to happen? Because we're going to have to trade a life for a life here. This is going to be a trade. It really felt
like a life for a life.
I knew it was going to be a life for a life, but I didn't know whose life.
Right. And it turns out it's Banner. I mean, it's
Alex.
Banner. Well, yes. But
I need a main cast.
Right.
Somebody was going down.
Right.
But I didn't know who.
This was a great scene just from a cinematography and from an action scene standpoint. The Battlestone scenes and the train scenes, very well done from if you're a fan of action movies, the worst thing you can see in an action movie is where you lose track of what is happening. Who is who and where your focus should be. And poorly shot action scenes, it's very easy to get lost in the chaos of the moment. This episode, and I thought this Livingston train scene, even better than the Battle of Yellowstone, this train scene did a wonderful job of keeping you in the exact moment of who's been shot, who is firing, where everyone is, who's on the train, who's on the platform, who's down, who's up, where is everyone.
I agree with that.
Not easy. You're tracking several main cast members where you have to keep them all in sight, plus countless extras who are screaming and running everywhere.
And countless extras who, as audience members, we may have only seen for a very short period of time, especially like some of those helper people who are on Banner's team.
Right.
Some of those guys we'd only seen in a town hall meeting type thing once. But and you had to remember that they were a part of which team.
But the show did such a good job that at no point did you not know what was happening. You didn't get lost in the action. And this would have been so easy to get lost in the chaos. And in the end, it actually turned into kind of a really well choreographed ballet. A ballet of violence, but a ballet though. And I thought it was so well done.
But can I ask you this? I agree. It was very well done and it stunk of choreography choreography.
Mm-hmm.
And so my only question mark about that is that part, is that you could feel it was a dance. And sometimes when you feel that it's a dance and you're watching it and it's like, he just shoots and then the next guy just shoots and it's like, oh, like, does it start to get to be almost like West Side Story where you're like faux fighting?
You know what?
Because you're dance fighting.
You know what it was? I think it didn't get to be the real one-on-one until the very end. And
Okay.
after the ranks were largely thinned, or people ran back inside,
Yes,
or onto the train like Ellie and Henry. Because at first you're getting lots of people being shot and mowed down all at the same time. It was
and moving in and out.
It was only when you got down to Sheriff, Jacob, Clyde, Spencer, did it become, and Banner, did it become a boom, 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 like he shoots him, he shoots him, he shoots him.
Yeah, and then you're like,
Banner's
looking,
dead,
you're
right?
doing
And then
the eye thing.
right, because then like you're down to the nitty-gritty, and then the very final shot is the Yellowstone guys, the Team Dutton guys, killing the very last Banner guy. And it's very Godfather. Like, they're like 3 or 4 of them shooting one guy up against a fence, and you're getting it from behind his point of view, and the sound kind of drops out. It was very Godfather-esque, very like the bloodbath of the Godfather, but it thinned to the boom, boom, boom really at the end. And I think because they really wanted you to know,
well, who was shooting who?
right,
Who
Clyde's going to take out
Jacob.
Jacob doesn't know Clyde, right? Clyde was hired without him knowing. I don't know him. He's the one who's going to take down Jacob. He was the one who tried to take down Spencer. He's the one who did take down Jack, but Banner takes him out,
Who knew
right?
That guy was going to be the biggest trouble ever. I mean, we did know, but I mean, when he was being in the interview,
but great that it panned out that way.
It did
though.
pay off,
because it was like, oh man, we knew this guy was a bad guy. We knew he was on the payroll, but man, he actually ended up playing kind of in a very important role. He killed a Dutton. He almost killed Jacob. He almost killed Spencer. Like, he ended up being a very important bad guy that we got to know from far back, and it finally kind of paid off. So I was kind of happy with that. One thing we didn't talk about before all this started, Spencer has to tell Alex, I need to stay here, but Jacob's going to go stay on the train with you and go to Bozeman, right? Because that's their plan. They're actually, the funny thing is, after all of this, they weren't actually going to even get off the train. Spencer wasn't even going to get off the train in Livingston. If he had not seen out the window all of this, he would have just continued on the Bozeman, and everyone would have been like, well, I thought he was supposed to be on that train.
right?
So, but then we have this great clip, and this kind of circles back around to what Kara was writing to Spencer all the way back in season 1 about Wars Come Home.
It's my uncle.
Jacob.
Ma'am.
War isn't a metaphor in this family, I'm discovering.
It is not.
Time to fight your wars, I suppose.
If we want a life, here it is. But we can build a life anywhere.
This is why she wrote you. War is what you came out for.
Again, the letters.
Mm-hmm.
Alex knows I wonder if Jacob even knows what Kara was writing to Spencer in all of those letters.
I'm sure.
Alex knows. Alex went through them. Spencer never read them. Spencer was read them by Alex. She, more than anyone here, except for Kara, understands what Kara needed from Spencer. The stakes of what Kara was putting on Spencer's shoulder. Alex got that. And in this moment, we haven't even considered this as a possibility, but Spencer here out of the blue offers to her a life not here.
Yeah.
My life doesn't have to be war. We can go anywhere.
Yeah.
And she's like,
what a thing to say at the end when you get all the way to Montana.
Right.
I'd be like, what?
right. And Alex in any other condition would have been like, I wish you would have told me that.
That should have been laid out as an option back in Zanzibar.
I was not aware that was an option, Spencer.
Right.
I know, you know.
Exactly.
But here we are. But you know what? If she had said it, I believe him. I believe that he would have done it in that moment.
Yeah.
He would have regretted it. Maybe he would have regretted turning his back on the family, like maybe he regretted giving away the lion's tooth. But in that moment, I think he absolutely would have done it.
Yeah.
If she said, let's just stay on, not even get off at Bozeman, let's just go to Portland with
But the
Banner.
thing is, he knew who she married, and he knew he married someone who would never say that.
Right.
So it's sort of like, it was an easy offer because he knew very well she was going to turn it down. So
fair.
In her heart, she feared she'd never see him again. But she saw him, tasted him, one last time. For her, that was enough.
So I would never be Alex in this situation. That whole concept of like, just like one more time is enough is like, I would love to think that. My parents always would say, like, you should leave wanting more. So like, you know, like vacation or something like that. Like don't go for 2 weeks where like you're going to get bored by the end of it. Like go for 1 week and leave wanting more. You know, like that should be the whole goal all the time. So partially I appreciate Alex's, well, we should say Elsa's voiceover on behalf of Alex because she was
I think she's reporting what's in
I think she's reporting
Alex's heart, though. I think that's Elsa's voiceover is, I'm telling you what's in their heart.
1,000%, yes.
Fully omniscient, yeah.
Fully, I agree. I just know for me, I would have a hard time. I'd be clawing back at this.
This seemed like usually Elsa voiceovers go for a bit, and they come at very key moments in an episode. Ends of episodes, beginning of episodes, after a big moment. This happens after all the guns have stopped, they've fallen silent, Banner's dead. Then we have this very 20-second clip of Elsa giving this moment. And I sat wondering why for a while. And then it hit me, because I think it all fell into place for me, and it goes towards a larger question of why does Alex choose what she chooses at the end of her life? Why does she choose not to have the amputation surgery? Even if she was to choose to, you know, have the amputation surgery, like, why does she choose what she chooses? Which is, I think, a large question a lot of people are asking at the end of this episode is, she could have had the baby and she could have had the amputation surgery. I think we're getting the first glimpses, and I think that's why this is here now, 30 minutes, 45 minutes before the end of the episode.
Yeah, to let us know.
It's starting to put the markers in the ground, pointing you to Alex's endgame.
Yeah.
She is making decisions here already. I think I have in my notes, the die is already being cast here. Mm-hmm. She's going to say to Jacob before she sees Spencer again, I think our conversations are done. She doesn't think she's going to see Spencer again. Mm-hmm. She thinks this has been the last time, that last kiss, that was it. And she's starting to make peace with her decisions, and she's already decided she knows how much time she has left, or at least she has an inkling of how much time she has left. So I think she's shifting to a mode of the baby, and I'm good.
But at this point, when she's on the train,
I think it's the ink. I think it's the seeds of this.
I'll go with the idea. I will follow your lead.
She's prepared not to see Spencer again.
That's all true. I'm curious about if she knew she was in any type of labor. I'm curious
Maybe not
if
labor.
she was feeling anything.
No, I think it's... Yeah.
She gave birth not that long after. But here's the deal that I'm going to shed some light on. A couple different things that's very strange that I've had experience with. Number one, I've had premature children. I've had premature children as young and younger than this baby. And so at 23 weeks, I mean, my girls were very tiny. They looked somewhat like that little baby John, somewhat. The thing about this that I struggle with is that I feel like I have to somehow make peace with the idea that the physicality of their world is different than the physicality of our world.
Okay.
I say this because I actually know a mom who had to have her arms and legs amputated after giving birth. It happened because of the labor of the baby. She got flesh-eating bacteria on her arms and legs. She actually lives in my town. Her name's Katie. And she, one of her kiddos went to school with my kiddo, so I would see her. She would actually come in her electric wheelchair, which she could work with her mouth. She would come because they didn't live that far away from the school, so she would actually come in her wheelchair and pick up the kiddo by the kiddo standing on the back of her wheelchair and going back. But she's out in the community. She is a regular part of our town. And so part of this, I want to say, like, Alex, I'm so sorry that you reduced your beautiful brain and your beautiful personality and all that the wisdom you could have imparted on this baby down to, well, since I can't be the one to run in the field or hold him all by myself, which I think that Spencer would have come up with contraptions galore for her to be able to be independent. You know, they would have figured out a wheelchair. They would have figured out something to use for the other arm. We have seen that there was war veterans and stuff like that who had amputees and stuff like that. So there was a lot going on around that area. I do think that the one thing that I also have to remember when I'm trying to wrap my brain around this is they were trying to imply that her breast milk somehow was very key to his early hours of life. Right. And that's something that I think we have to remember, because that part, I, as the premature mom, could hand my babies over to the NICU, and they had the medications and the formulas and everything that could mimic my breast milk when I couldn't, even though I did pump for them. So they ended up getting all that. But my parents actually made it like a complete whole formal deal out of the idea that if it was about saving the babies or saving me, they had to all agree to save me. And that's something that like, I didn't really know that much about till after, because everything went real crazy.
No state, I'm sure.
No, and I was very out of it. They were giving me a lot of medications, and I had been on bed rest. They had me upside down to try to keep the babies in. It was a whole big thing. But the idea that I never would reduce my own self to thinking like, if I can't physically pick up my child, then I'm of no good to my child. But I'm going back to that, remembering how physical their life is, and that we have a lot of things like swings and jumpers and blah, blah, blah. We can put our babies in. And we have the luxury of having jobs where we can stay home, where maybe your spouse, like Spencer, could be at home helping, right? But that doesn't work that way for a ranch. You know, like he has
in
to
1923
be out there, right? And so it doesn't work like that. So I'm trying very hard not to judge her decision, because I think that that's something that is so easy to do, but try to like walk through like which parts do I think was just emotional? Which parts do I think, if they're telling us the breast milk was like the magic key, and had she been prepped for surgery right away, the baby wouldn't have gotten the breast milk and the baby would have died. And so that, to me, is what they were trying to telegraph. Like, somehow she was the key to keeping the baby alive. Did you see it the same way like that?
I did. I think it becomes clear. I have two clips here that Alex goes, she further explains very explicitly, I think, actually, why she made the decision that she had. I
agree with her reasoning.
But her reasoning,
I don't want to be someone to be taken care of.
That's her backup reason. That's not her primary reason.
It's true.
In her conversation with Jacob, she gives one reason, and then she gives as a secondary reason also, I don't want to be a second child. Mm-hmm. It's not her primary reason. Her primary well, let's play the clips. There's a funny interaction here, just to break up the seriousness for a second. When they get into the ambulance, Jacob demands to be, Jacob is great with her here. He won't leave her alone in the ambulance, demands that he gets to ride in the back with her. In the birthing room, he's present for the birth of this baby. Mm-hmm. And when they don't want to give her the baby, he says, give it her goddamn baby. When she wants to refuse surgery, she said no. Jacob is being the vocal voice that they don't want to listen to this woman in labor. Jacob is being support voice for her. So he's great here. But there's a very funny thing before they leave in the ambulance. She says, make sure they have enough gas. How long? Because she asked him how far it is to the hospital from the train station. He's like, it's 5 or 6 miles. She's like, make sure we have enough gas for that. And he looks and he's like, we're not going to run out of gas. And she's like, you'd think that wouldn't be a concern, but once bitten, twice shy, Jacob. And he's like, I've never had a woman asked me that question before. Like, he's really looking at her like, you are an alien of a woman I've never met before. But Alex has this world experience where gas in the tank is very important to her in her life experience.
Well, not getting stranded.
We're going to play two clips here back to back. The first one is Alex talking to Jacob about why she has made the decision that she's making. The second clip, we're going to roll right into it, is the final conversation Alex and Spencer have, where she tries to explain why she chose and did what she did to him. The last two men she's going to see. Now, what you have to remember in the lead up to these clips is she gives birth to the baby. She says, hand me him. And the doctor, being a doctor, says, why are you so certain it's a boy? She's like, I just know, give me my son. And he's like, well, you're correct. It is a son. And he goes, the chance of this baby living an hour with its lungs, not even an hour. And then the baby lets out the loudest cry, first cry you've ever heard. My son did not cry. He was APGAR 0 when he was born. Full minute, no baby crying. It was a very scary moment for me. I was there. I followed him around to all the stations while they were trying to get him to breathe. He had come out with a cord wrapped around his neck. It was very serious. It was very scary. So I very much appreciate the very first baby cry here. And it is a loud fuck you to the doctor cry. Cause he literally just finishes saying the baby's lungs aren't even developed enough, and he doesn't get it out before the baby's like, wah! The baby's got lungs. Then they're going to prep her for surgery, and she's like, no. Lady, you're going to die. No. She said no, Jacob goes. And they're like, fine. Hands the baby to her. I'll get you a priest. She goes, I'm giving all this background because I had to, the clip was like 4 minutes long. So I just cut it down to just her conversation with Jacob after the doctors are like, leave the room. She's like, I'm going to get you a priest. And she's like, I don't need one of those either. That's where we leave off. Now it's just Jacob and Alex in a room. After that, Alex and Spencer.
I'm going to name him John. After his brother.
He'd like that. But he'd like a world you're still in more.
A mother that would choose herself over a child. There's no mother at all. How can I raise a child with stubs for feet and clubs for hands? Then there's 2 children.
It's a conversation you should have with your husband.
I think all our conversations are over. They were splendid. In truth, I did most of the talking. You tell him why for me.
You tell him yourself.
Well, that's the plan. But you can see how well my plans are working out.
You will tell him yourself.
They wanted to take my legs and my hand and take up baby. Throw them all away like rubbish. I said no.
I can see that. Your legs are a long way from your heart.
I'm not a dreamer. I don't imagine running through fields. I have to do it. And I would never trade what we make for me. Be patient with him, Spencer. If he's anything like me, he'll be a terrible child.
So in that second clip, you also have her I'm not a dreamer, where she's giving that, alternative reason of, I'm not going to be running through fields. But at the end of the day, I think from Alex's point of view, she only had a black or white choice. I don't think there was any gray there. And maybe there was. The baby clearly had lungs enough to scream.
Lives.
And the baby clearly lives. So
And she dies within hours.
She doesn't, that's the last conversation that she has.
Right.
He curls up next to her. He's just crying in that scene, which is great acting from the two of them. And then the morning comes, and it's actually great. The morning shot starts with a baby mother and 2 baby birds in a nest, and the baby birds are like chirping up at the mother. And then it pans into the room. She's dead. She's got like some of the gray. She almost looks like Hillary a little bit.
Yeah.
Baby is sleeping, and he gives her a kiss on the cheek. No tears though. The tears were for last night. Now it's Dutton pragmatism. He calls out Kara, and I love the scene because of course he knows Kara is waiting outside, right? He doesn't have to say, is Aunt Kara here or go out? Just Kara, she comes in. I don't know what to do. Kara says, you're not supposed to. I know what to do. She had already sent one of the ranch hands to go get 2 milking goats that are producing now. Kara's already on it. She was already planning before the morning came. And now it's time for Spencer and Jacob to finish the war. And that's when they go to Whitfield, and we played that clip before. I think if you listen, I think she gives you the reasons as best as she can explain it. And I think it is hard to say. And I think you really have to put yourself into the 1923 mindset and
where we were medically.
Right. And
where we were with like what your life expectancy was anyway.
Right.
How many women died in childbirth is like very common.
How fast it moved from her feet. Like, and then if you look at her in the bed, like it really was black up to her knees. Yeah. So I didn't realize it would like spread so fast, especially since they had begun to warm her up. Like I guess I don't really understand frostbite or and the fast cold, fast warm, and the slow cold, slow warm. Like, I don't know. But I think to her, the decision made sense. And
that's okay. I'm okay with leaving it pretty much at that. It's just saying during this time, the percentage chances that, she would have survived anyway seem low. Even though we did just see Zane get his head drilled in.
I mean, he's like doing full on war up and down stairs and roofs.
Up and down the roof with a hole in his head with like an apple core.
That's a magic bandage. They make bandages really tough.
That was rough. It was awful. Losing Alex and Spencer as a couple was awful. This was heartbreaking. It was really heartbreaking. And I didn't expect the baby to live. So I was like, okay, let's see what happens next.
When you eventually cut to the next time we see the baby and it's outside and they have the baby out in the cold, like the winter cold, and Kara's like, geez, child, but you're going to be on a third goat by the time June comes around. So it seems to be thriving, not just surviving, but thriving.
You know what secretly made me laugh a little bit? If you guys don't know what Dabney Coleman looks like, who plays future baby John, he's actually a short, stubby kind of looking guy. He's not strong and big. He is not John Dutton. He is not Spencer Dutton. So kind of funny that they ended up choosing an actor who actually physically isn't a man who is ever cast as a strong, strapping cowboy type. I mean, he played executives. He played like middle management office, jerk or whatever. Like that's a lot of times what he played. And so to think about him as who actually John grows up to be is like really funny because he's not going to grow big and tall like his dad. He's not going to grow big and tall as Harrison Ford. He's Dabney Coleman, who was never the leading man, beautiful or strapping strong man. Isn't that funny? What a funny casting choice in the end.
Maybe that's why they're like, we have to explain why the baby turns into Dabney Coleman and not Kevin Costner, Brandon Sklenar, or Harrison Ford, or
Tim
McGraw. So. I think that really wraps up Alex and Spencer's story until the epilogue, which we're going to do at the very end. We're going to handle all the epilogue stuff at the end. But curious what you guys think. I know it's been a really hot button issue. So what do you think? Why did Alex choose what she chose?
And would you choose the same for yourself?
Could you choose the same? And it's a little apples to oranges though, because again, we're in 2025 and there are so many more options now than there were literally 101 years ago. I think, Caroline, we have to finally talk about the Battle of Yellowstone.
Battlestone?
As we've cleverly termed Battlestone in this episode.
Battlestone.
All right, so Caroline, I think one of the complaints you and I saw, especially in our Facebook group and also messages being sent to us, were people feeling like we've spent 2 years building up this battle. How on the earth are we ever going to see this battle for the Yellowstone Ranch? How could it possibly be worth it?
And people really were like forlorn. Like they're like, I can't believe we're going to go through 2 seasons and not even get to see the shootout. Like they were already resigned themselves that we were not going to see it.
Well, when you think there's only 1 episode left or 2 episodes left, and I mean, he wasn't even home yet.
Right.
How could you possibly wrap it up? And so, but here we are now on the other side of it. Battle of Yellowstone, better than you expected. More, less.
There were definitely cool moments.
Perfectly whelmed.
There were definitely cool moments. I mean, I think they did a great job of doing a lot of the stunt acting, like up on the roof, sliding down the roof side.
A lot of good roof running.
Doing all that stuff. That was all fun
Limitless
and exciting.
Bullets. Suspension of disbelief.
Definitely limitless. Loved Kara up in that like crow's nest type position where she was just like shooting down blowing their heads off.
Yes.
That was amazing. I loved that. Do you think that Kara was using James's rifle from 1883?
You know, I wish I had a better eye for these things, but I would like to think so. And I feel like that's really consistent with this show. That
I feel like it is because, and I'm going to give nothing away.
It was a big gun that he was using when he was bleeding.
Yeah, I was going to say, okay, so in mainline Yellowstone, I'm not going to give you guys any details, but if you guys watch, you already know what I'm talking about. There's a scene at the end of this wrapping up Yellowstone where someone does have to go get a gun. And it is clear that there are guns in there from the past. So that does make me think it would be wonderful and useful for the prop department to put in.
And just the fact that
you would keep it. You would keep.
Of course, when Jacob shows up in 1894 with Kara and finds Margaret dead in the snow, James dead a year, and these 2 starving boys, they would definitely make use of James's gun being around. I mean, it was a major feature of 1883. Remember, he shows little John, who's just 5 in that show. Remember, they kill his first deer and they go through the whole blooding ceremony, which was tied back to the original mainline Yellowstone. So I think I'm in my headcanon. And if someone has a better eye for guns, they can tell us for sure. But in my headcanon, it's definitely James's elk rifle from 1883.
What do you think about how they utilized Elizabeth? Because, boy, we haven't used her name in the last 159 minutes.
Talk about 2 characters that end up being so kind of
sidelined.
And even as much as we talked about Elizabeth this season with the rabies and stuff, and really just invisible the last couple of episodes. And as it turns out, not important to the plot. You know what? The thing from her scene the most was that they called it the conversation pit, which seems so very modern.
It seems very 70s or 60s.
Kara tells her, get down in the conversation pit and stay there with the shotgun. Get under the table.
So you guys, that's what they called it, or what I know, like decoration-wise. Yeah, those sunken living rooms that are like the
which we know from. I mean, how many glasses do we see John pitch into the fireplace over the years in mainline Yellowstone from that conversation pit?
Very, very true.
If only he had known a great aunt at some point had been shooting bad guys from under the table.
Overall, I thought the actual battle was fast for the most part. I was overwhelmed by the amount of guys that came in cars.
Overwhelmed. You saw the episode before I did, and it was the first and only thing you could talk about was like, but Mike, there are so many guys coming out of so many cars.
It was a lot.
It was wave after wave. It was a lot more.
And so when they all started driving up, I was like, what? Like, we don't have anything. And we had done nothing. I kept saying, why did they not Home Alone this place? Why do we not have paint cans on ropes that we are hucking out the window? Why don't we have like all kinds of tacks and nails and rope nets and like whatever we can possibly have? Like, I wanted them to Kevin McAllister the shit out of this place.
They don't Kevin McAllister the shit out of the place. In the end, you have Jasper, Dennis, Randy, Zane, Kara, and Elizabeth. That's your Kevin McAllister. That's your Home Alone. Some roof shotters and a guy named Jasper.
Yeah, but Kevin was only like in like 3rd grade.
It's true.
All I'm saying is dig a trench or 2. Have some of those sharpened sticks. Do the things like you do with zombies. Where like when they start climbing up the house, you jam something through the window.
At least better protect the approach to the house. That's for sure.
Anything.
Or barricade the door more.
Barricade the fence. Like,
I mean, they have
tie it up tighter.
Kara in the high position with the elk rifle is extremely effective.
Perfect. And the roof guys are effective. I just don't know why they didn't utilize. This is their home base.
I think they probably received so many more men attacking than they probably could have possibly guessed. Because even when the first 4 cars are showing up with 4 guys in each car,
I couldn't believe that.
Zane has a great plan. He is like, Jasper, you take the first car, Dennis the second, Randy, I'll take the last one. And then they execute that. And because the cars are still moving, they totally have the element of surprise. Those 6 people, again, including Elizabeth, they hold off this horde. This is like a video game level. There are video game level of like shooter games where the entire point is just how many waves of enemies can you survive. This was very much that. And to the point where they hold them off to nightfall. Like they literally have to fall back and regroup because the resistance of these 6 people is so much. It was really impressive. I thought it was really epic. I thought it was very fast paced, but at the same time, it was large in scope because of the amount of men and because of the amount of different action. You had Kara, you had the two guys on the roof, you had Zane and Jasper down below.
You had the machine gun guy.
And then the machine gun
element.
When the nighttime comes, that's the next wave, right? Because after you clear the first wave, the next wave is a little bit harder. So the next wave is the Tommy gun guy and Molotov cocktails, right? They've amped it up and they breach the house. But as they're breaching the house is when Spencer shows up. Spencer takes out 3 people with his elephant gun.
Which was amazing. One guy.
Tommy gun.
I thought it was one shot, got 2 guys.
Yes. Tommy gun guy gets 1 bullet where he blasts him between 2 cars and he actually ping-pongs off of the 2 cars. Such is the force of the elephant gun. Then he takes out 2 guys with 1 bullet, like through the ears. And then he switches to the sheriff's handguns. And in less than 30 seconds, kills 7 people.
I think it was less than 15
The
seconds.
6 guys inside the house, and then when he's in the house, 1 guy through the window. 7 guys dead with the handguns. Boom, 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 boom. I watched it so many times. I was so fucking stoked. I was so amped up and
I don't know what you were going to say. I was like, you're so what?
I was so excited. I was trembling with excitement from it, where the one guy comes in and is like, man, Spencer, I didn't even get to kill one.
Yes, that was so funny. That was funny. I give him a lot of credit for that.
This really sums up, I think, again, another clip that sums up the Dutton experience is Kara lamenting the things she does for the ranch.
Of all the things I've had to do for this ranch, this takes a cake. Takes a bloody cake.
You know, the question that kept coming to my mind after I watched the scene over and over, and the amount of people they kill, the amount of bodies that are now strewn about their front yard and the ranch. I think this goes for people who have seen mainline Yellowstone. There's a flashback, I don't know, in season 3 or 4, where John Dutton is having a flashback to his final moments with his father, who's played by Dabney Coleman, which, if we're tracking the family tree correctly, would be baby John, who was just born. He and Dabney Coleman, he's about to die, he's very old, and he tells John to not let them take 1 inch of the Yellowstone Ranch. Not 1 damn inch. And that becomes the governing credence for Kevin Costner, John Dutton, for himself and for his children. No matter what happens, don't let anyone take 1 inch of this place. Watching this battle, and now having heard for so long the amount of bloodshed and amount of fight that has gone and been exerted by the Duttons to protect this land, I feel like I really understand for the first time in a really deep way why
not 1 inch.
Dabney Coleman feels so strongly of don't let them take 1 inch. Why he wouldn't allow Banner to graze on his land. Why he wouldn't sell just 50,000 acres of the 800,000 that they go on to own to get them out of financial troubles in mainline Yellowstone. Why not 1 goddamn inch? It's because of this. It's because of this scene. It's because of Alex. It's because of Jack. It's because of Sam. The only person they lost in this battle is in the opening salvo. When Jasper throws the rock to wake up Sam, who's fallen asleep, he stands up and he's like, I'm gonna box your ear. And he gets shot and he's dead. He's the only casualty. He's the only casualty
it's like
on their side.
basically friendly fire by doing it like that.
Yeah, by popping up, with the flag. He's the only one they lose, and they put down all these people, but the blood is in the soil. It is literally in the soil of this land now. To say nothing of Elsa and what Margaret and James had to go through to build the initial building, and what Jacob and Kara have done for 30 plus years protecting this place and building this place. This is why. And I felt for the first time like I really understood it, and I think that's the achievement and why we needed a Battle of Yellowstone, why we needed this scene, and it was worth it, is to really make you understand for the first time. Because I think one of the people criticize all the time, and it goes towards the Duttons aren't good people. They're greedy, right? They have too much land. Just get rid of some of it and make your lives easier. These are things you hear all the time. Like, you could sell off just a little bit, give it to the airport, give it to market equities, and get yourself out of financial trouble. This is why. And I felt like really, as someone who's really immersed in this whole universe, I felt like I really understood the first time. So I don't know. I don't know if that resonated with you at all, or like...
It's the memory. It's the memory of the whole thing, right? We're looking at the big book, and they said, go to the chapter that has that really important memory of why we fight so hard, right? And it's like, that's the chapter we leapt into. They also, for as maybe as implausible as Spencer's rampage was, I do have to go back to, these guys were just sheepers. They were just farmers. They were just regular
not soldiers.
Guys, not soldiers, and not...
There was only one soldier here.
And not big game hunters either.
Right.
So, you know, as wildly hilarious as it was for him to just mow them all down in like 15 seconds, they actually gave him a resume that would say, yeah, don't you think he would mow them down in 15 seconds? Like, these guys don't know, you know, they have to shoot a bear, you know, every once in a while or whatever, but they don't have to do what Spencer's been doing for years. So I thought it was...
Or went through when he was in Argonne. Remember Banner's reaction to, he was in the war? Well, whatever. Yeah. A lot of people were in the war. He was in the cavalry in Argonne, and then his whole demeanor changed. Like, there are soldiers. There are people who aren't soldiers, who you give a gun. There are people who think they're soldiers. There are soldiers, and then there's Spencer, who is at the apex level of being a soldier and being a killer. Like, a killer of the hardest game there is to kill, right?
There you go.
Why do you think Kara was so interested in what Alex was like? She asks Jacob on at least 2 occasions, and maybe 3, in the final wrapping up scenes of this show, of, tell me what she was like, or I wish I would have gotten to know her. There's a very sweet scene where it's between their final conversation, Alex and Spencer's final conversation, and when morning comes, where she tells Jacob, she's like, you think I could just pop in?
Yeah, that was
and and she opens the door and she sees them sleeping there, and so she closes it, but she desperately wants to know Alex.
Yeah.
Is that just out of her love for Spencer and that he came home?
I think so. I think it's like wanting to know that part of him. She had him leave, like, you know, this single man.
He got him home.
You know, being a soldier. And so then, you know, to have Alex come along and be this person who she didn't even know anything about. You know?
You have a wife? That's the first thing he says. Like,
well, because we said the whole time, I can't believe in that freaking information back to the sheriff. He didn't bother to say, and by the way, tell them
a British woman may come. Right? A British woman, an incoherent British woman may show up at my door.
Exactly. So
he hasn't written to you the better pickle of my marriage.
I thought the Battle Stone was great. I hope that people feel really satisfied with it. I hope they feel like it was enough of a fight to warrant all of the hubbub of this. And then worth it to see Spencer actually do his thing. Worth it to not have a lot of loss for the Yellowstone. We do need to have a moment for Elizabeth in terms of she did take out an important guy at an important moment when he was going to kill Zane.
Yes.
And Zane
makes it through. No one had Zane living on their bingo card.
No one had Zane making it to the end. My goodness. My goodness. And I was so glad that Alice and the kids made it to the end and everything too. Okay. Are we about to talk about Elizabeth for just a hot second? Because I have questions.
Let's listen to this final no, we have two conversations. We have the beginning of the episode and then we have the end of the episode where Kara and Elizabeth talk about Jack and talk about Elizabeth. Let's play the beginning one because I think this goes towards a lot of what you and I have had a problem with Jack. And part of this is you have to remember, we learned Jack is 25 years old. Jack is not 17. He's actually older than Alex. Keep that in mind and the way he acts. But this is the beginning of the episode.
He never came home. Jack, he never came home.
Sit. He went to town to meet his uncle on the train. Felt Jacob was too short-handed. Was he? I don't know. He's lived to be 80, judging such things. Don't know why a 25-year-old would think he knows any better. That's the boy in him, Elizabeth. But he's a married man now. He doesn't get to make decisions about his life without asking. Because the consequences of those decisions affect more than just him. I just pray he's learned that lesson before it's burned into you, my dear. Now get inside before you catch your death.
Death is the only thing you can catch out here.
Kara gets it. I'm curious, do you think Kara is mad at Jack? There's a tone here where it's not even disappointment. It seems like it's more severe than disappointment. It feels like she's actually mad at him for disobeying his uncle, her husband, a man of 80 years who has survived and raised this ranch from nothing.
Yeah, and she says that fact, like why he would question him.
Right.
But you know,
why he would question him after he has made a whole life of correctly making these decisions.
Well, it's disrespectful.
Right. Especially on the heels of Jack not wanting to listen to Jacob last year when Jacob was recovering. And he was like, I could lead. And he's like, you can't lead shit. You are wet behind the ears, puppy. But it's more than just disappointment. It feels like anger. And it feels like anger at Jack for, if more than the disrespect to Jacob, for putting Elizabeth in this position.
Elizabeth, and I think by extension, Kara and the rest.
And the baby, the unborn baby that Elizabeth has. Which, by the way, if you guys are waiting for Kara to mention this baby, or Elizabeth to be like holding her stomach or mention the baby, don't hold your breath because it doesn't come up.
We did not lose the baby because of the rabies shots or anything, right? We're not missing anything. This baby is
almost
still
feels like
there,
it
right?
feels like there's a missing scene somewhere because it never gets mentioned in this episode. Now, maybe you don't mention it here when you're talking about the consequences of your actions, though it seems like you would bring it up when you're bringing up you don't leave your wife.
And your unborn baby.
And your unborn baby.
That's what you always say.
But certainly...
Or your pregnant wife. You don't leave your pregnant wife.
Right.
But here's the thing. Jacob doesn't say it either. When he leaves, he says, you're in charge of our two most important things. Right. Kara and Elizabeth. Not 3, Elizabeth's baby.
Right.
So listeners, I am confused. We believe the woman is pregnant.
We've not been told otherwise.
But
I'm
honestly,
positive we were not told otherwise.
Nothing makes sense about
it's the last time they mention it.
She was treated. It doesn't make sense how she's acting. It doesn't make sense how Jack is acting.
I even went back and I looked all through this episode wherever Elizabeth was to see if there was some kind of spotting or something
indicator.
Some indicator that
Background,
TV uses to show some kind of abdominal paint, something that you would show. Nothing. There's no, after that episode where, we're pregnant, and then Jacob looks kind of worried, we talked about it. That's the last time it comes up, and it does not come up in the 112 minutes runtime of this episode. And these are 2-pointed conversation Kara has with Elizabeth relating to her relationship with Jack, and it doesn't come up. So,
can I ask you real quick, as a guy, how do you feel about what Kara's saying about men can't go around making decisions that ultimately affect their wives without sitting and talking with their wives?
She's 1,000% correct. I'm old. All right. I'm not 25. I haven't been 25 in a long time. But even at 25, I wasn't married yet, but I was about to be married. I would never have acted this way. As soon as there's someone in your life that's depending on you, someone that you profess to love and to care about, but someone that you even take the responsibility for keeping safe and protecting, whether financially or physically or however, it's not your own life anymore. It's just not. And to act otherwise is silly and selfish and just the height of immature.
And reckless. Like, it makes me so angry.
It's immature. I mean, we talk all the time about how men, at 25, your brain still isn't fully deformed. I feel like Jack is the walking proof of that.
And it's too bad because
he should not be able to rent a car at 25.
I'm utterly confused by the choices that he made, but he was a very consistent character. You
can't be surprised by it. You just be disappointed.
He consistently put himself in harm's way despite being married. Right. And the thing that actually pissed me off the most about all that stuff was really that Jacob assigned him a job.
An important job. And said it was the most important.
I don't know. That's very line leadery. This is the most important job. It is very line leadery. I think, as a teacher, it's totally something you do with the problem child.
For sure. But Jacob is not going to take Kara's safety lightly, though. So if he's putting him there, I'm sure as far as trusted guns go, I'm sure Jacob trusted Zane a lot more and did put Zane in charge of the outside, but specifically told Jack, this is where you need to be. I'm 80. He says in the episode, I'm 80 fucking years old. And he says in relating to the slow poison of the iron poisoning.
That was awesome.
Like, if he doesn't come back, okay, he doesn't come back. Jack, until Spencer's here, you, good or bad or reluctantly, you're the next Dutton in line. You're the only other Dutton left right now. How little does he care about that legacy? It turns out he really just wanted the glory of an immature, a boy. I said this 2 weeks ago. He is a boy in men's clothing. He is a boy playing at men's games.
In sheep pants.
In large sheep pants. He's a lamb in sheep pants.
Yes, he is.
And acted like it consistently. And you could tell me he was 18. You could tell me he was 25. He acted like a boy.
Yeah.
And showed no growth through 2 seasons. And that is a shame.
Makes me so sad. And then just as a story writing, you guys, I don't understand how the narrative thread of this baby got lost. And one of the things that we have to talk about is that whole conversation between Kara and Elizabeth when she is getting ready to leave, because now we find out that Jack didn't come back, and now it's serious. Now we're going to take it
now it's serious
this time.
Right. I think it's telling that no one misses Jack the entire episode.
God, I know.
That's how insignificant. That's how little they count on him.
Well, also because both teams think he's at the other team.
No. Yes, I would agree with you, except for when Spencer and Kara finally like, hey, Kara, Spencer, and they come and they finally unite. She does the thing where she like looks around Spencer's like big frame and it's like, where's Jacob? Notices immediately Jacob hasn't come through the door with Spencer. She doesn't say, where's Jacob and Jack? Because only a couple minutes later, she's like, found my boy! But it's Elizabeth that's like, oh, and Jack's not here either. And she's like, oh, yeah. No, Jack too. Where's Jacob? Okay, we know where Jacob is. I took that more as that's how little import he had to the plot and into the safety of this ranch, to their livelihood, to their life.
It's sad. And it's confusing. I'm just going to say straight up, if in 1944...
you want confusing, yeah.
If in 1944, Elizabeth had a baby that is now like 20-something years old wandering around, I'm utterly confused by everything that happens from the part when she shoots the guy to keep Zane safe to the end. Elizabeth's character gets done dirty, I think, big time.
Let's take a listen.
I know. Feels like you're quitting. But you're not, child. The reason for you being here is gone. I hope you find another reason in the city and it sweeps you off your feet and you write me stupid letters about him.
A man is the last thing on my mind.
Well, that's a good lesson for all of us. Never works out that way, though. No, one always creeps in there and muddles the senses. Having your senses muddled now and again is not the worst thing.
All right.
That'd be lovely. Now, I must return my attention to the future. Here. Because looking at you is a window to the past. And the past.
No matter what life has in store for me, I'll always love him.
You won't. You won't. You'll have memories until you make enough new ones. And then one day you won't remember him at all. And that's all right. It's fine. That's life. I'll remember him enough for the both of us.
Man, I've listened to that so many times, and it is harsh every time. Now, the first half of it is playful, and it's, we all could be muddled. We all do to have our senses muddled from time to time. And, go meet a guy. You're gonna meet a guy. You're young, you're pretty, you're beautiful. No mention of you being pregnant. But the second half of the conversation really takes a cold turn from the point where she says, now get on with yourself. I have to turn my attention back to the future here. Little baby John in her arms. Why? Why is she so cold here? What do you think?
First of all, I do think it would be fair, even though they have shown Kara to be a very patient, very understanding woman. I think it would be fair to have gotten a little tired of the Elizabeth Jack shenanigans. I think there's some part of you, honestly, that thinks that whole thing was a friggin' mess.
When everything else going on is going on. In summertime and things are great, who doesn't want the youthfulness of love? Right. When you're bloodshed and fighting for this in the dead of winter, when you are struggling to survive, this nonsense, this childness? Child, is that the word? Is it this childishness? just no time for it.
But maybe what we're hearing is...
I'm old and curmudgeon-y? It's possible.
No, maybe what we're hearing is honestly what she thinks Elizabeth needs to hear in terms of like moving on. But at the same time, it is extremely difficult to ignore the baby thing with the future talk. That is extremely difficult for an audience member not to be like, wait, what? And then also remember all of the weirdness that Elizabeth brought. The rabies, bizarro. Like everybody else knows how to take care of themselves. What I feel like, what I'm hearing from Kara is the veiled disgust of the weak link. And Jack and Elizabeth in a world of survival, those two birds have been the weakest links. And so for her, I don't think that she's necessarily like angry at Elizabeth or even trying to be harsh, but I do think she's over it. And she's done babysitting this person from the city who doesn't want to be here. And she's done with all of this. Now, I disagree with Kara a whole bunch about the idea like you wouldn't remember your first husband. You wouldn't remember a person who you've had one miscarriage with and now, in theory, a second child, right? You're not gonna forget about Jack. I think all of that.
I think you're right, though.
Overkill.
I think all of that was just pushing her out of the nest. I think all of that went towards Kara picking up on indecision on Elizabeth of,
that girl's been saying she's leaving since like day one.
But remember what we said about once you're dead and then everyone gets their sainthood. Now that Jack's dead, it would be natural for Elizabeth to be like, I can't leave here. Like he's buried over there. Like cause remember, she's like, you can come to Boston with me. Like she didn't really want to leave Jack, but she just couldn't do this life. So now she is leaving Jack because he's in the ground. And so she's having some indecision. So my read is the most favorable read, if you're going to try and put it in character, is Kara adopting this cold nature as a way to make Elizabeth like, it's like, in a movie or TV show where like the cute like dog, like they can't have the dog anymore. So they start throwing rocks at the dog and like, go away, you damn dog. No one wants you anyway. But they really want the dog and they're sad the dog is leaving, but it's just not good for the dog to be there. I think that's kind of what Kara maybe is doing here with Elizabeth being like, you're a window to the past and you're, just move on.
This life isn't working for you.
Yeah. You are the weakest link. This is not you.
You are the weakest link.
Goodbye. You are, I should have pulled that clip. But I think you're dead on though. I think there is an anger at Jack and Elizabeth there in your disgust.
Because I think that it's like
the winter thins the herd. This is Elsa's clip from earlier in the season. Winter and nature is meant to kill you to thin out the weakest links. Elsa literally talks about this in like 2 different episodes this season in her voiceovers about the bleakness of winter. This is what we learn. The herd is thin in the spring, but the strong ones have survived.
This is where we are.
It is likely there are more unmarked graves in Montana than those bestowed with marble and inscriptions that tell strangers who lay here. Lovers need no marker. They know exactly where their soulmate rests, because they put them there.
I think that was important because that's taken from Alex and Jack's funerals. But there's a couple things going on in the scene visually. We have a bird overhead, right? We see an eagle. The show has marked death or Dutton death with a bird flying by, right? It was really hammered home with Elsa in her death scene. So we have it here, this idea of the bird carrying on. We see it in mainline Yellowstone also. But this idea of this goes against what this comes before Kara's speech to Elizabeth, but kind of goes directly against what she says, that soulmates don't need to mark the graves of their loved ones. They know exactly where they left them. So it's part of like the senses dull and fade, because we're going to hear in a second that Spencer's memories and senses never dulled of Alex, and he always knew where she was. Kara's saying, it's almost like she's kind of implying like, you never really loved Jack.
Well, or
you didn't love Jack enough.
They weren't soulmates. I think that's her thing. I think that's her beef, is that they aren't soulmates.
You'll hear in my several times I've talked this episode about the line of strong women. Elizabeth doesn't appear in that. And that's not taking against the character of Elizabeth. I think Elizabeth was written to be a weak link. But I think in the Elsa, if you're having a Fates get together and narrate 1944 and it's Elsa, Alex, and Kara doing voiceovers together about what's going on in the future, I don't think Elizabeth plays into that.
I don't either.
She's not part of that line, that unbroken line of strong Dutton women.
So that's, you guys, where we have to leave Elizabeth. And I am feeling for her like she was a rough character in this entire series for me, because I feel like she got the brunt of everything. And she had a real ditzy partner in Jack, and she didn't really actually get to live up to her potential at all, I don't think, because she just had all this messiness going on.
You know, her mother's the exact kind of person to be like, I told you so.
Oh,
she shows up. She's going to have to deal with that for so long when she shows back up in Yellowstone.
Yes, yes.
What do you think about Jacob retiring? It strikes me Jacob's the kind of person, once he retires, he dies. Jacob can't be someone who dies. He retires.
The only thing, though, is that the love with Kara is real.
That's true.
And they do have a project now. Baby Jack. Baby Jack.
John.
They do have a project now. Baby John. So with that, I could see them having a slow grandpa rocking on the rocking chair, reading stories to Baby John. I could see that. That works for me.
Pondering life and shit.
It works.
That's what he says.
That works.
I'm going to ponder life and shit like that.
That works.
At some point, I'm curious, do you think Spencer becomes an involved dad? Because, yes, we've only seen 2 scenes where his child and him were in the scene. And obviously he leaves the baby with Kara, to go kill Whitfield. But now we see him leaving for a week to go wrangle a new herd instead of buying them to rebuild the herd up in the Crazies. He's going to be gone a week without seeing his kid. Who knows what can happen when you're in the Crazies? That's a tough mountain range, Jacob says. Is it just he has such faith in Kara and Jacob?
Yeah.
Or is it just this is the work now? Like, I've ended the war, but now I have to rebuild this ranch, and it's my responsibility.
It's both. It's all the above. I mean, I think that he trusts that the babies are taken care of, and he trusts that this is the work now. I mean, this is the war now. The war is them against the land and the elements
and the prices of
everything.
Herd and cattle.
So that's the new game they're playing. And so, I honestly, to be very honest with you, I only needed the part of the epilogue where they showed him dying on Alex's grave.
Let's listen to it.
Other than that, I don't feel like I needed a ton of this epilogue, to be honest with you.
I do like that they went out of their way to say, how did they rebuild her? Because remember, they're down to 100 heifers and 3 bulls, and that's it. Now, that's not enough to have the empire that they're going to have in 100 years' time. So you needed I like the fact that they spent 2 minutes to explain the plan, because they don't have the money to go buy a new herd to the size that they need.
True.
But you have strong young ranchers, and apparently, hopefully Zane's hole has healed. You've got Spencer, though, and he is young. He is everything Jacob was 30 years ago, and now it's his time to build it. So I like that they spent the time on that. Let's listen to this final Elsa voiceover clip.
Spencer never remarried. Took the comfort of a widow and made another boy. Refused to marry her. And one day, the widow was gone. For Spencer, her memory didn't fade. Didn't fray at the edges. Didn't dull. Not one. Alexandra Dutton was born on April Fool's Day, 1901, in Oxfordshire, England, and laid to rest March 29th, 1924. When old age robbed him of his memories, he simply closed his eyes and dreamed up new ones. And 45 years later, my young brother joined her.
Took you long enough.
there's a lot to unpack there. There's stuff that I maybe we didn't need to know about. There's stuff that we did need to know about. I mean, they give us some facts. I mean, we do learn.
Widow talk is so...
The widow talk obviously stands out. I mean,
it stands out because it's got to be setting us up for 1944.
A significant plot line.
There's another boy. We know now there's another Dutton boy out there that for some reason is going to come into play and...
Right. It's not the widow and one day the widow and child were gone. It's one day the widow is gone, which also sounds very final for the widow. But no mention of the child.
Oh, very odd.
He refuses to marry the widow.
Which I hate that. I hate the wording of that.
Why do you hate it?
Because I don't understand why it's oh so loyal to Alex to sleep with the widow, make a child with the widow, but then it's a bridge too far to marry her. Like, right. You've already... I mean, if you slept with her... Then, and this time, right. When birth control and all this stuff, like, you know you're getting her pregnant, okay? Like, you slept with her. Like, this is the way the show goes. Everybody gets pregnant. They're fertile as hail, okay? But I can't believe that the whole refuse to marry, it speaks to my soul about what I thought, like, Spencer is like a stand-up guy. So if she's a widow and pregnant during this time and unmarried, people aren't really gathering, like he... is like making her destitute and like a bad situation. You know what I mean? Remember, She can't just go get a job.
Right.
And she's got apparently at least one child. This is strange. Y'all, I'm just straight up, what the hell? Like, I didn't need this sentence. I don't want this sentence. I understand it's got to be setting us up for 1944.
That's the only thing that makes
sense. There
has
to be an adult character that they wanted to tie in.
Maybe
somehow
it's Elizabeth. What about the theory that it's Elizabeth, which is taken root in some parts of the internet?
Elizabeth.
She's a widow. We were talking just a couple of weeks ago that if Alex didn't make it, the idea of Spencer and Elizabeth, once Jack was dead, the idea...
So you're saying but it would be like Elizabeth didn't leave?
Or comes back 20 years later. She's a widow. She's got a kid. She brings the kid to the Yellowstone.
Ugh.
They start a dalliance.
It can't be 20 years later. I don't think he's 60-something.
Well, 1944 is, if it's a plotline in 1944, that's going to be 20 years from now.
Yeah, but when would he have gotten the widow pregnant?
I'm assuming it's going to happen right around the 1944 time. It's going to be part of that plotline.
But she's way too old. She's in her 40s then, and he's in his 60s.
I think...
She's got to be 20.
Barely. I think
25. Yeah. Jack's 25. I think Elizabeth could easily be 20, because didn't she finish school?
I guess so, because then she had moved back from Boston from
school. I think she's got to be like 20.
Okay, so maybe she's too old.
I think she's too old by their standards 40, and stuff. 40 would be
in 1944
a lot. And I know they're trying to make the Duttons like the super.
Listen, I don't think that's what it is, because that would be really icky for him to.
That's what was going to happen though, because
out of like an honor thing, like it would have been an honor thing, not like, oh, we can't wait to sleep with my nephew, my cousin's wife. No, it would have been the honor thing of.
You can't have a single woman.
Right.
Single women do not apply in life. Like, there's no way for her to make a living.
That line really, just on its really tinges who we think Spencer is. So I hope there's a good reason. I hope we're standing here and it's like, what was the villain in like Little House on the Prairie? The annoying one, Elsie? What was
Nellie?
Maybe it's like a Nellie type of girl. Like, man, I'm glad that he's not going to marry her because she's kind of like a nasty bitch. Something like that.
The nasty bitch? Oh, you mean the widow that he just sleeps with? She's good enough to sleep with.
It's not good enough to get married. That's what I'm saying. I think the only reason to put it here is a plot line for 1944 to get you ramped up.
It's gotta be.
But now let's talk about 1944. I mean, we can go back to.
I don't know if I'm ready, because I had to have a moment too about the widow was gone and Spencer acting like just so freaking weird to me. I don't feel like, and then if there is this other child, then what do we think? Spencer was just a ne'er-do-well dad to this other child?
Well, this is what I'm saying. Because if you're parsing the words, she says, slept with a widow, had a child, refused to marry her. Then one day the widow was gone. Nothing but the child, which makes me feel like the child did not go. And widow was gone feels very final to me. That doesn't feel like a widow got on train and went.
No, widow's dead.
To San Francisco.
That's what it means.
The widow is dead. So one day the widow is gone, but the child remains. I think there's going to be a stepbrother to Baby John in this series. A much younger stepbrother to Baby John.
He can't be much younger. It doesn't need to be much younger.
Well, if it happens in 1944, it's going to be at least 20 years younger.
No, you're making them get pregnant at that point. This is the interim, I think. So this is like, it could be like 1930 he meets the widow.
It could be.
I think it's supposed to be, because this is what happened to Spencer in between.
But there's 45 years, though.
I know.
But so...
Do you think we're going to see the widow story?
Yeah, I think it's a
plot.
The
actual widow?
Yeah, I think it's a plot line.
Actual widow.
I think the whole thing is going to play out. I think we're going to be introduced to a widow, and he's going to be...
Oh, I just thought the widow was gone already.
No, he's going to be someone in his 50s who fathers a bastard child who is a very young stepbrother to baby John, who will be a full-grown man at that point. This is a plot line in 1944. Not something that happens off screen. No,
I agree.
No, the entire widow story.
Okay, well, I'm going to agree that the child is. You can make predictions.
I'm predicting that the entire widow storyline will be fleshed out, because otherwise you need to get the context.
We do not see the widow at all, and we only see the child. And the child has to somehow prove that this is...
Well, certainly would have a complex, right? Like, you're not like a real Dutton or something like that.
How would you even know, or whatever? Like, there's no DNA tests and whatnot. So if the widow's dead and Spencer hasn't seen this child for 10 years or something, then who knows what this person... So I'm going with a rogue 20-year-old some boy ends up showing up, maybe 18, whatever. I don't know what he's going to be. He shows up because probably if we're 44, we might be coming off World War II or whatever, and we have an 18-year-old. That would make a lot of sense, you know.
Going on right at the end of World War II, right? So
that's what I said. It's the end of World War II.
Yeah.
So like totally the same, but I don't know. I don't like how it felt like it besmirched.
It really did. It really felt like it besmirched him a little bit.
It wrecked his reputation for me in such a serious way. It was like, I didn't need to hear any of that. I didn't need to hear that. You can show it to me in 1944 if you think that that's what's going to play out. But damn, I didn't need to hear that he refused to marry her.
Some positive things which point out in this thing is the idea that his memory never dulled or retreated of Alex, which I think is pointedly placed here because it goes directly against what Kara says will happen to Elizabeth with Jack, where you will forget him entirely, she predicts. So but by contrast, maybe again, though, it's the pain to enhance the wholesome, right? So maybe we raise this point about Elizabeth to enhance how committed Spencer was to Alex and to the memory. Though, again, you're besmirching it in the same breath saying that he had this whole widow thing where he refused to marry her and there was a child born of it.
And it makes it sound salacious. And
it makes it sound very salacious, and that he just on a one sentence line makes him look very bad. So without any other details. He lives for 45 years. He dies in 1969. That puts him, if you're doing some rough math, and I spent the time doing this math, that makes Spencer somewhere between 36 and 41 when the show is taking place, which then makes him somewhere between 81 and 86 when he dies. Because in 1893, which is when James dies and Margaret dies a year later, we see Spencer. We know John at that point is 15 because it's 10 years after 1883 where he was 5. And Margaret was pregnant, I believe, at the end of 1883. So he should be 10 in that flashback in 1893, which if you do the math then makes him 40. Let's say he wasn't fully 10. Let's say he was 5. That would make him like 36. So you would tack on the 45 years. And so he's pretty old, but also makes him much older than Alex, who is not quite 23 in this series. He's probably 41 and she's not quite 23. Even if he was 36. Now, big age gaps are not uncommon at this time. They're not uncommon today, but it's still pretty startling.
Yeah, no,
he's so much younger than him.
And he's still so, like, strapping and strong at, like, 41, which, I mean, I feel like a lot of people we saw were pretty run down by then.
What do you think of the heaven scene, the took you long enough scene?
I thought it was sweet. I mean, honestly, the way that I looked at it at first, the way that he has, like, a white carnation in his lapel, the way that she's wearing, like, a white gown, there was a real, like, wedding-ish vibe, a wedding reception vibe that was going on there. I thought it was really beautiful. It made me,
they wistful. Never had a real wedding, so it would be a nice heaven where...
It would be really pretty and really nice. And I was laughing a little bit because it's obviously Alex's heaven, which makes me smile and laugh because as much as I feel like Spencer knew his P's and Q's, he could dance, he could show up and like hold his own in those situations. I have a hard time believing Spencer Dutton's heaven is ballroom dancing. I doubt that's what it is. But I have full love for men who will dance, and I completely appreciate that it was an incredibly romantic scene. It had this funny little Shining vibe to it because of the sepia and the ballroom in general of that time.
Very Happy New Year. Very Happy New Year, 1901, right? Isn't The Shining if you overlook the hill?
And it's just all that same, like the
sepia tone and the music, the very kind of like phonograph scratchy music as the episode ends. I don't think we've ever had a show that ended too with the fade, with the still photo that then fades to like a sepia photo. It was really
sweet.
It was very cinematic.
It was beautiful, and I appreciated it. I just giggled to myself a little about the big game hunter ballroom dancing into the heavens.
Here's my take on it. I think it is Alex's heaven. I think Alex has been playing this wedding without the groom for 45 years. Mm-hmm. I think Spencer's heaven is wherever Alex is.
I like that.
And if it took him finding her in the wedding scenario, then so be it. He doesn't care about that. He cares about his lightning hair and his shooting star, which as he passes away, I take it that when he's on the grave in 1969, he's tracing his fingers over her name on the gravestone, then he lays flat. I think that he dies there. I think that's pretty conclusive. I know there's been some, it's not really dying. He's just laying there.
People think that he didn't really die there.
I've heard a lot. But
Where are you hanging out? What alleyways are you hanging out?
Reddit is a weird cesspool.
Bad information alley.
Yeah, no, I think he definitely dies there. And I think you see the shooting star, which is such a nice little effect. The shooting star. If you didn't see it, you have to hold on the shot and keep watching when he's laying and they kind of have the sky above him. There's a nice shooting star that goes there.
It's like within the cloud.
Within the cloud.
So
it kind of is like behind the cloud, but you see it a little bit.
But it's like call back to the shooting star conversation of Jacob and Kara.
Right. If a shooting star could talk, that's what she was. Who knew that there were two of them? Right? And it's Jacob who really makes a direct line between Kara and Alex. So, so I like to think that his heaven, because this was such a nice callback to 1883, because the final shot of 1883 is Elsa in her heaven racing horses with Sam across the plain where she looks beautiful and it's sun drenched and it's dappled and Sam looks great. And that's her heaven, is them racing horses across the plain. Now, I also think that's probably Sam's heaven. I think for Spencer, it did. But I think for Spencer, he's just like, with the bush, with the line, who knows, with the two guys.
Zanzibar, babe. Zanzibar.
All the ravaging. Yeah, that's true.
I would go Zanzibar, baby, all day long. That's what I would pick. I'd be like, that is where you want to be. Why are they picking ballroom dancing? I'm for it.
She was owed a wedding.
Love it.
She was owed a wedding.
And I'm finding
they look so young in that. You said something off the cuff that
I think they filmed it at the beginning.
That thought, since you said that, has been in my brain, and I wonder if that's not true. I wonder.
Alex's face is like
it's
nice
changed.
And full
it
in a
had changed.
Nice way.
It had changed a lot over the season.
It looked really healthy in the wedding reception heaven scene. Right. It looked very healthy. She looked so.
Fuller.
Everything looked.
She looked very different than she did, even taking away the illness and the trauma. Yeah. But he did too, though, and his face, their face shape actually changed a lot over the 2 years. So they looked very much like they looked when they met at the bar in Kenya.
Very fresh faced.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much taking us to the end of this episode. There's a couple things, questions for 1844. I just jotted down some ideas. I think the Spencer widow child storyline. Who is the widow? Are we going to find out? Is she a character, or are we just picking up in 1944 where the widow is already come and gone and it's just the baby?
I think that just the baby's the key there.
I think that's a big question that is definitely going to be addressed to some extent in 1944, because why else include it? 1944 is about 11 years before Kevin Costner, John Dutton would be born. Canonically, he was born in like 55, 56. I'm like 99% sure. So I'm curious if at some point over the course of a season or two in 1944, if we're going to have a time jump to show the birth of Kevin Costner, John Dutton, which I think would be interesting just to kind of close the loop. But who knows? Maybe they're planning on Yellowstone 1973. Who knows?
That would be so wild.
Elizabeth and Jack's child. If they're not going to just erase this pregnancy that Elizabeth had, that's another Dutton with a real claim to the Dutton Ranch. Not a stepchild, not an unmarried, out of wedlock child like Spencer may have had. This is a honest to God Dutton through the older brother line who is out there in the world.
Which we do need to just mention for those of you who have not watched mainline Yellowstone, and I'm going to say this as cryptically but informatively as possible. There is a character who is not a blood relative Dutton, who is a part of the group, who I think there's potential for this bloodline of the Dutton side to come into play for that character of mainline Yellowstone, and could end up being like, that's why John Dutton and his wife took in this other person, because I think that there may turn out to be the step aspect there, and not even really step. It would be full. You're a full-blooded Dutton if you're Spencer's child.
If you're Elizabeth and Jack's child,
or Spencer's child too. Either of these. So, like, I'm saying that these two kids create these alternate familial storylines that are there. That I do think that mainline Yellowstone, I'm like kind of chomping at the bit, because that was a story that was really kind of smoothed over. They kind of told us a little bit.
A little lip service.
I really don't want to talk about it too much, because I know a lot of you guys, we have mainline Yellowstone you guys can go listen to. We have all of it. So if you guys want to go watch that and listen to our podcast, we have Steph and Sheila who cover that one. Mm-hmm. And that one's amazing. And it has maybe some of this. Now, if you have this in mind, you may be playing into that.
Also, I have a lot of thoughts about Family Tree, but I can't do that here. We were already talking almost 4 hours at this point, and I think Caroline will she will take the mic away from me if I start getting into the Family Tree and the 7 generations.
Yeah, the editors will kill.
I have a lot of thoughts about that, but let's save that to 1944, where it crystallizes a little bit more.
And we'd love to talk to you guys on the Facebook page in between, just because the show's over. Like, please come on over to the Facebook page. We'd love to interact with you guys and love to hear what you think about all these storylines. Curious about all of them. Mike did a ton of great historical work that he's going to be putting up on the website.
A little Battle of Little Bighorn and Greasy Grass and the land of the
Battle of Little Big
Battle of Little Bighorn and Battle of the Greasy Grass.
I said the website, but I mean the Facebook page.
The Facebook page, but you can just at the website too. You guys, we're recording this a little bit late, and you guys have been reaching out to us on all of the channels about where the podcast has been, and so we appreciate you.
Calling our cell phones, but we appreciate you very, very much. We cannot believe how loyal and loving our fans are, and we really appreciate you very much. So thank you guys so much for sticking with us and listening. We definitely would appreciate all your reviews, and we hope that you would be happy to give us a 5-star review. I know we have a good one that came in recently, so Mike's going to read that for you.
This is a 5-star review from Reviews by Michelle. Thank you. Thank you for dissecting the incredible 1923 in such an enjoyable and positive way, week after week. I really appreciate the history research you also point out in the episodes, and that you didn't do it in a gotcha way to catch errors. You do it in a way to appreciate the time Sheridan took to keep the show authentic. Kudos all around. Kudos to you, Reviews by Michelle, for having good taste and saying nice words, and we appreciate you.
Appreciate you so much. We so appreciate that. And you guys, it would really help if you could go write a 5-star review for us. We've got another one for you.
Only because I don't know when I'm going to get to read these more. This is from Top Ranny. Give me life! 5-star review. If you love 1923, this podcast is a must listen. The hosts break down every scene with such passion and insight, making me appreciate the show even more. Their deep dives into character arcs, historical context, and behind the scenes details gives me life. It's like reliving the best moments of 1923 with fellow fans who truly get it. Can't recommend it enough.
That's really, really nice. That's really, really nice. Top Ranny?
We can't recommend Top Ranny enough. She's given us life for him.
Ranny, you're wonderful. Is that how we would pronounce it?
Top Ranny?
It's TOP-RANI. So
thank you so much.
So much, Top Ranny.
Top Ranny.
We appreciate you. We have had so much fun doing this one for you guys, and that is why it takes us forever to finish them, because we just want to talk with you guys, and we want to talk with each other about all these wonderful characters and all this awesome storyline. So this is Caroline.
And one last time, this is Mike. Thank you for listening to the Yellowstone Podcast 1923 edition. If you wouldn't mind heading over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and rate, review, and subscribe. You can listen to our backlog of Yellowstone Mainline, 1883, 2 seasons of 1923, and all of our other shows. We're dropping Handmaid's Tale right now, and Decorating the Set is an ongoing show, and Gilded Age will be back this summer. So head over there, leave us a review, leave us a 5-star review. If you leave us nice words, we're going to read them on the air, because we love you guys, and we thank you so much. You have made this a top-ranked podcast week after week. Even when the show is not in session, you guys are still listening, and we just absolutely cannot thank you enough. And thank you for the patience of listening to this over 3-hour podcast, but also just being patient while we put it all together for you. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.
Pod Clubhouse.